What is happening, everybody? All right, so Mopar Chat Live is live. Mason, sip a little Diet Coke. All right, so figured I would chat with you guys. This is Friday night, day after Thanksgiving. I trust everybody had a good Thanksgiving. At least I hope you did. I'm pretty sure everybody's probably coming down off of their food hangover. I know I am. Their food hangover. I know I am. But, yeah, for this Mopar chat, mainly focusing on basically plans for the Hellcat. If you guys have questions, things you might want to know, mods to your car, stuff like that, upcoming Mopar news, feel free to jump in. Michael Corleone, what's up, man? Good to see you on board. So basically what I'm doing tonight is just same thing as I normally do. I'm liking the name of Mopar Chat. Seems to fall in line with the basic theme of my channel anyway. And since lately I haven't been posting up too many of my thoughts on in particular cars, or doing normal typical update type things with the new Hellcat. What's up, Don Powers? What the hello? Lou Smoke, what's up? No, I wanted to chat with you guys. Let you, Hottie, what's up? Good to see you. Let you guys know what's going on with the car. So I have ordered the drive shaft for it, and I'm not so sure power level the car really needs it, but the car needs it. The idea is to try to actually launch that thing as hard as I possibly can, and unfortunately, I just don't have a ton of confidence in that stock drive shaft. And realistically, yeah, I get it. There's not going to be a whole lot of a difference in terms of ET. I'm not really doing it for that. It's really more of a durability mod. So realistically, I'm not looking to pick up any actual performance. I'm not expecting to pick up any mile an hour or any type of ET gain in general, other than the fact that I'll be a lot more confident launching that car hard. Now, you got a ton of options right now for drive shafts that are out there in the marketplace. And in working with several of the manufacturers over the last year or so, I've seen some drive shafts that I like, but also that I don't like. Who we got? How's Dream? What's up, man? Thank you very much. He says, loving the streams. Man, I love doing these streams. I actually like doing these because I get to interact with you guys directly. So, it's a lot different than doing one of the other videos. Those are really hit and miss too. Some of them take off, but it's weird. They'll take off like 6 months after I post them. But at any rate, definitely like doing these live streams a lot. Like to keep doing them too. See, James Rendon says, hey, what's up? Hey, Hellcat James from Albuquerque. Good. Thanks for coming in, man. Love Albuquerque, man. I've always had a good time when I went to Albuquerque. So, talking, you've got, which is, kind of been making drive shafts and basically all the other, variants of the LX platform for a while. And you've also got G-Force, which also puts together a pretty decent drive shaft. Now, I went a little bit different direction. I actually went with the Wiles drive shaft. And mainly, I went with the Wiles for two reasons. One, they've got a billet flange. And if you're not familiar with these drive shafts, check them out. Actually, I don't even know if they've got a website up or if they're even advertising these drive shafts, but they use and it's a 3.5-inch flange or 3.5-inch shaft as opposed to the 4-inch, which I like for a couple of different reasons. One, I like it because it's smaller, so that's a clearance thing. Two, I like it because it's smaller, it's actually easier to balance. And so theoretically, you don't get the same issues with specific speed harmonics jumping in there. So that's one of the main reasons why I went it, but it's an aluminum drive shaft with a carbon fiber inner sleeve, and that's also there for dampening as well. A little bit of strength, but not a whole lot. Let's see. Hottie is asking, how would a one-piece aluminum drive shaft help a Scat Pack? Someone told him that it'll put down more horsepower. Is that true? No, it's not true. So here's the thing. The idea with an aluminum drive shaft really is more for durability, as Scat Pack's really not going to need it. So the whole consensus is, well, it's lower rotating mass, so it should put down more power. There's a fallacy with that. The thing is that if you have a larger diameter drive shaft, you actually have a higher inertial mass because your get a thing here. Hang on, timeout. Visual prop. So let's pretend like this diameter is the diameter of your drive shaft, which is about right because it's about 4 inches around. If your center point from here to here, let's say this inner ring is less, which it is. If that is the diameter of your drive shaft, then you have less actual rotating inertia to overcome. Think of it like this. It's the same as if I gave you two 10-pound plates. One 10-pound plate was this big around, and just for the sake of argument, the other 10-pound plate is this big around. If you hold it from the outside, it's easier to twist the bigger one. But if you're to hold it from the same diameter shaft on the inside, it'd be harder to get that larger diameter to turn than it would be the smaller one. That's basically the physics behind why a larger diameter drive shaft, even though it's lighter, doesn't necessarily translate T's. Now, unless we're talking about like something that's very heavy, like a steel drive shaft that's extremely thick, then in that case, that thick steel drive shaft, it would still be harder to turn because of the weight and the actual inertia that you're trying to overcome when you're accelerating that thing. So it works in decel also. But hopefully that answers the question. Let's see. Al's Dream checks in. So I was wondering on getting a JLT intake for my Hellcat, but does it really add 15 wheel horsepower as they say? Without a tune, just completely stop. No. Okay, so here's the thing with those intakes. I will concede the fact that on a dyno, yes, you might be able to see a little bit more horsepower, but here's the problem with that. Once you start bolting everything onto the car and you close the hood and you put the car into real world situations, man, you're going to notice that intercooler temp. You'll start notice your intake air temp just climbing and climbing and climbing. When the car is cold and when it's been sitting and when it's, you know, on a kind of just a roll up to the staging lanes, make a hit right as it's still cold or just as you're keeping it warmed up, you're in the staging lanes, the hood's open. If you're a real convict situation, in that case, you might see a little bit of a gain, but if you're doing it for the gain in power, I wouldn't really recommend it. If you're looking for sound, just the theater, you know, just to add a little bit of, you know, audio punch, you know, to the experience of driving the car, I say go for it. You know, you're not really going to lose anything at the drag strip. You're not going to gain anything at the drag strip for the way that most of us actually run our cars. You make a hit, get back, pits, pop the hood. You know, that in that situation, you're not gaining anything. You're not losing anything. You're basically just picking up on sound. And for that, I say absolutely, you know, makes the car a little bit more fun to drive, go for it. But in terms of outright power, not really. As a matter of fact, it is practically impossible to beat a stock Hellcat airbox with a stock Hellcat filter when you're comparing it to actual performance numbers on a drag strip. Now, once you get into, you know, dyno numbers and all of that, you know, you might see a little fudge factor here and there, but let's be real, man. I mean, if they say you pick up 15 horsepower, that's not going to gain you anything anywhere on any given day. You got to remember that with Hellcats and with the 392 cars, 15 horsepower isn't, the car is not going to, it's not going to make the same power going all the way down the track. I mean, you'll pick up 15 horsepower just from air rushing through and into the engine compartment, cooling things off. So believe me when I tell you, that's not enough to even notice. But I do like the way they sound. So if you're doing it for that, go for it. Phoenix 98, what up, babe? What up, Phoenix 98? What you up to? Brian Macias. Man, that's a cool sounding last name. How would a 6.4 engine hold up to nitrous with headers and a ported manifold? He says he's been thinking about question on running that, but he doesn't know it could be dangerous. Could be dangerous, absolutely. Nitrous on a 392 is not as big of an issue as people like to make it out to be. In fact, 392s love nitrous. In fact, they love them a little bit too much. So much so that the HP70 automatic transmission becomes your limiting factor, not the amount of power that that engine's going to make through nitrous. Or at least, let me rephrase that because I kind of screwed that up. The HP70 is not going to be able to handle the torque hit in the way that it can handle power from a supercharged car. The 392, is it dangerous? It is dangerous if you're not tuned properly. And I need to really focus on that for a minute. We're talking colder range plugs, the right amount of fuel going into the car. You need to be running a wet system. You need to be running on a window switch. You need to be running a progressive system. All of that is needed to make modern cars run properly on nitrous oxide. Gone are the days when you can just throw 150 shot on, say, a 99 Camaro and go out and play with it. It's just not like that with modern cars. Modern cars' heads flow an amazing amount of air. Cam profiles on modern cars make some race cams pale by comparison. You've got to remember that you're dealing with a situation where the blocks themselves aren't really that much stronger than what they were, say, 15 or 20 years ago. But the cylinder heads, the camshaft, the intake manifold, all of that is engineered to flow so much more. And that's obviously why they make so much more power. But with the 392, you get an added, I don't know, kind of a fear factor there with the ring lane being so high on the piston. That's not necessarily a bad thing if the tune is right. But again, I can't focus highly enough on how important that tune is. Now, the HP70, if you're running a progressive controller, you'll buy yourself a little bit of time there. The last thing you want to do is hit an HP70, especially with the vehicle weight that we're working with here and with the power level that we're at. You don't want to hit it full on with a $150. You want that thing to progressively feed the power in. And even then, you can hit a torque limitation. I'll give you an example. On a Mustang dyno, you'll typically see slip on an HP70 right around 530 to 550 pound-feet of torque. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I would feel more comfortable on a 100 shot. I'm not saying you're going to buy yourself a ton of time, but the idea is to try to mitigate that hit to that transmission for as long as you can. And there's plenty of guys that are doing that and having great results. So again, if you build and you buy the right components, that's really what's going to make that engine last. Again, I can't recommend it enough. Spend the money where it counts when it comes to nitrous kits. Let's see. Sophonics X 2019 Camaro SS getting the 10-speed auto. This will be a quick car, by the way. What do you predict it running? What do you predict it running at the track? I think it's going to be neck and neck with a C7. Blasphemy. Yeah, it is. All right. So, look, man, I like that idea. I've been a big, early on, I was kind of panning, really, the new Camaros. But in some ways, they've kind of grown on me. As far as how that car will run with a 10-speed auto, I think it'll be about, because of the torque that car has, I think it's going to be basically neck and neck with the Mustang, somewhere in the high 11s. And I would honestly put that car on a drag radial before I took it to the drag strip. But that being said, 1180 should be a pretty attainable number in halfway decent air. My only concern with the 2019 SS is what gear ratios are they going to be offering for the rear ends of those things, because if they don't do something about that rear ratio, if they're just trying to put together like a setup that's more for fuel economy or something like that, it's going to numb that 10-speed. Where you're really going to see a big difference with that 10-speed versus the 8-speed is on that 4 to 5 shift. The gear ratios in the 10 speeds in the HP70s and HP90s and in GM's 8-speed are pretty close. I mean, they're basically identical, without splitting hairs here. But on that 4 to 5 shift, it's going to allow that engine to stay in the power band a little bit better. And I think with that, you're going to see definitely an uptick. I would say 1180 should be the number that you're gunning for. 1170 to 1160 should not be unattainable. Bone stock on a tire on a well-prepped track in good air. So that's what I would be shooting for. Chasing Cars checks in with a question, says, or asks, how are the stock 275 all seasons or summer tires on the SRT? Any good in bad weather or worth getting another set? Actually, I kind of like the all seasons in inclement weather, but just as with any tire on those cars are making a lot of torque, a lot of power. They're only as good as your right foot will allow them to be, and they can be equally as fun. So I wouldn't worry about getting another set unless you just want to have another set laying around. If you're up north and you're gonna be running through a bunch of snow, it's probably good to get a second set to have laying around, keep your stuff looking nice and pretty. But make sure you keep your summer tires. If you do have summer tires, keep those in an area that is somewhat climate controlled. You never want a summer tire, like a true summer tire, tread wear rating less than 300, or a drag radial in any temperatures that are going to be lower than about 30 degrees for any real length of time. They can crack. Let's see. Optimistically Cynical checks in with, he says he took his son to the park and when he got home, he found his goldfish is dead. That's a shame, which is a hard situation for any first-time parent. How do you explain autoerotic asphyxiation to a 4-year-old? I don't know that you can. They don't really have the cognitive capacity at that age to actually be able to process that type of a situation. That's something he'll find out. Just have him listen to a lot of NXS and watch a lot of Kung Fu. That'll at least get him prepared. Al's Dream checks in. Opinions on the AZ850 315s on a Hellcat. They're actually not good at all. Actually, I'd take that back. They're a good tire to put just to get you from point A to point B. I think that realistically, if you were to expect a whole lot out of the Atturo AZ850, you're going to be a little bit disappointed. But that being said, if you run them for what they're worth, they're actually a lot of fun in terms of just being able to light the tires up at will. And believe it or not, those tires actually have pretty decent lateral grip, way more than they do have in terms of acceleration or braking. But yeah, lateral grip, they're actually pretty good tires. Again, use them for what they're worth. They're an inexpensive tire. They perform to their price point, and let it ride from there. RT Live says, I was just looking into the AZ850 just to try to hear somebody talk about it. The reason why they talk so much about them is they are inexpensive. They are a tire, and they're not necessarily a bad tire. There's actually a lot of good to be said about that tire. In fact, when I did the testing, I was surprised about how soon I could really roll into the throttle with those tires when I was actually kind of chasing apexes around that business complex. As far as, if you just want to get in the car and stand on the throttle, it's just going to blow the things right off the rims. But, a little judicious application of throttle, and they're a lot of fun. I say give them a shot. And if for no other reason, then they're a great daily tire. So just don't expect to get any decent 0 to 60 times out of them. Hottie checks in again, says AB Mason. He says he ran his 392 on the drag strip on his stock 275s. Oh, you got a dynamic package. Nice. In trap 114, put 315s and dropped to 111. Yep, what's going on here? Let's see. He says his rims are the Hellcat rims from the 2016. Part of that is the fact that those 315s are significantly heavier than your 275s. But that being said, a lot of that could have density altitude issues. What were the conditions? What were the grains? There's a lot of stuff that checks in with that. So make sure they're not rubbing, by the way. That's another thing to consider. But, realistically, I wouldn't necessarily expect to see a mile-an-hour drop of 3 mile an hour. But, that being said, conditions and other factors can also play into that. So just keep an eye out for any kind of tire rub and, take a look at what the weight is on those things too. You might be a little bit surprised. High Octane RT, what's up? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's see. Life is Lee checks in. Thoughts on 10-speed GT versus 392 8-speed. What do you think would win in a race? Well, I can tell you this much. In a drag race, my 392 never lost one race to a 1918 Mustang. Didn't matter if it was a performance pack. Didn't matter what tire it was on. A lot of that, though, had to do with just how hard my car would launch. Even though it's heavy, with the torque multiplication of the 8-speed, the 309 rear gear, the torque converter that comes with the 392 stock, all of that is very well matched. And realistically, that's more to the point. That car is just so well matched. Now, where the Mustang does have the advantage, obviously, is going to be on the top end of that track. It's lighter, it's making really good horsepower, but it carries its power very well, and more importantly, it carries torque very well on the high end. Now, that being said, that 4 to 5 shift at the end of the track helps immensely for that Mustang. I would go so far as to say this: that 4 to 5 shift on the big end of the track is probably worth an added 1 to 2 miles an hour. And I would be conservative really at saying 1. I'd say it's probably closer to 2 miles an hour at the end of that track, and helps it pick up probably a solid 10th and change. The Mustang is no joke at the big end of the track, so never take it lightly. But if you're racing the two, it could end up being a driver's race. 392 with a good launch is going to force that Mustang to chase it down. It's always going to be a tight race, but again, you cut a good light, that Mustang's going to be staring at the ass end of that car all the way down the track. But last thing you want is to get reeled in by a Mustang at the big end, so make sure you're tight on those lights. Toby Rama, how you doing? Checks in with, I know this is more about cars, but now that we are seeing diesel pickups making power comparable with semis, yeah, no kidding, right? Is there a point where the transmissions won't be able to keep up? Not really. I mean, you're looking at a situation where engineers are paid a lot of money to make sure that those transmissions are warrantable through use, misuse, and abuse. Now, keep in mind that, modern transmission technology is such that, I'm continuously amazed about how much power these new multi-speed gearboxes, and I say it more tongue-in-cheek. I mean, we're talking 6, 7, 8, 9-speed transmissions going into some of these vehicles. So I'm not too concerned with the actual transmissions themselves, but I am concerned with other components. Drive shafts, U-joints, rear ends, suspension. Those are the things that I'm more concerned with. The transmission itself, when engineered as a powertrain, I'm not really worried about its durability, but everything else down the line, I'd be looking at that. And also keep something else in mind. With modern tuning and with diesels, propane injection, nitrous injection, and the like, you're able to spool these things up with so much boost and make so much power that, once you get into mods, all bets are off. And it really doesn't matter at that point what's been engineered into that transmission, because with diesels, adding another 20 to 40% of torque is almost as simple as a tune and a couple of bolt-ons. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. But as far as overall durability, nah, I'm not concerned about it one bit, provided the vehicle is stock. Friends, Fitz Films Garage, hi. Hey, what's happening? Kingside, I think is what it says. Let's see. What do you think about putting a Vortex supercharger on a V6 charger? I think you don't really want to do that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I would just say that if you've got the income to put on a V6, you would be a lot happier, more than likely, moving up to probably a 5.7 at that point, because you're going to have the advantage of torque at that point down low. It's going to be just a much more rich driving experience. And you didn't let me know what year you're talking about, but at this stage of the game, the 5.7s on the pre-owned market are very affordable for most folks. If that isn't in the budget, then hey man, no sin in saving. I'd say let it ride for a while and step up when you get the opportunity to. Let's see. Vince Films, what's up, Mason? What's up, Vince? Let's see. Let's see. The Sloan checking in with, have I seen anyone using ported heads by Frankenstein cylinder heads in Texas? Good or average compared to ThiTech or MMX or HHP/BES? I actually prefer Sean Hooper. He is the single best head porter that I know. He's the only guy that we use. And that's Hooper's Heads. Now, he is an instructor at the School of Automotive Machinists. He is the guy that actually has the program for the CNC machining of those heads in terms of an actual CNC support. He's also helped to develop quite a few things for Texas Speed. So, I mean, the guy is just really good, really strong overall. You don't hear a lot about him because he doesn't do a whole lot of advertising. In fact, I don't think he does any. He mainly works for shops. But, you know, realistically, you know, I don't see any, of course, it depends on a lot of the, you know, porting of cylinder heads and all that. It really depends on where you're going with that engine. You know, if you're going to build an NA engine, then yeah, it really does start to make a difference. You know, when you can pick up 30, 40 CFM on a set of heads that's already flowing 340 CFM, that's a pretty big jump. So in that case, cam selection and everything else is going to become real important. And of course, intake manifold is going to become probably your only limiting factor at that point with what kind of power you can get out of the car by using those ported cylinder heads from wherever they come from. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're looking to put a set of heads together. And oh, by the way, when you're getting a set of heads done, brings me to a good point. Set of heads ported, what you want to do is you want to talk to those guys about setting them up for whatever setup you've got going on. What I like about Hooper's heads is that I can tell him specifically what I'm shooting for. I can tell him what spring pressures I'm shooting for, send him the spring pack. It's up for specifically what I'm looking for. So let's say I'm putting a camshaft together and I've got a requirement of say 605 lift on the intake and 560 on the exhaust. I want to have an open seat pressure of 400 on both sides. Then I can send him the springs and he'll set those heads up for exactly what I'm looking for when I'm speccing something out. So I know everything is in balance, so to speak, when the valves are opening and closing. It makes a big difference, and it's those little touches and attention to detail that can make all the difference in the world. So when you do decide to go that route, just make sure that you have the head set up properly. Don't just throw the springs in there and let it rip. There's actually a little bit more work that needs to go into those before you bolt them on. Chris Hayden, what's up, bro? Says, oh, I'm at my channel yet, not your channel. You already know your channel. Indeed, I do. Unfortunately. Okay, so let's see. Black on White Charlie chimes in with, what are my thoughts on chambered mufflers on 5.7 Hemis? People say they kill power, but when he put Flowmasters on his, he actually felt a little bit more gains, better low end torque, and oh yeah, and it barks. So here's the deal. Yeah, so chambered mufflers, excuse me. Here's my rule of thumb with chambered mufflers on cars. If you have an X pipe, I prefer to see a flow-through style muffler. If you have a H pipe, then I like to see a chambered muffler in those scenarios. And it has more to do with how you've got two different pressure waves, and the main one that I'm concerned with here is the actual exhaust pulse. And at high RPM, what can happen is if you have a chambered muffler, that pulse, when it hits the chamber, gets echoed back. And that pulse, part of it goes through the muffler, part of it gets pumped back into the exhaust system. That'll actually help you build a little bit more cylinder pressure down low, which is why you're noticing a little bit more torque down low with that chambered muffler. That works both with an X and with an H. But the problem with an X pipe is as those pipes are coming together, you only have one spot where they're basically touching and you're forcing a pulse back, and that can cause a little bit of a backup at high RPM. That's why guys say they kill power. Most guys that run them really will never notice a difference, and there's really, to be honest with you, not a whole lot of cars that'll get to a power level where it will actually start to affect it. So again, if you like the way it sounds and you like the way it runs, let them, let the rest of them talk all the noise they want to. Your car is running just fine with them. And, as far as, and the chambered muffler with an H pipe, the reason why I like it better is because you've got the entire length of a pipe with a crossover. That extra, any reversion will get dumped into the crossover, and you just have more volume there to work with. So that's the science behind X pipe and muffler, or H pipe and muffler selection. But yeah, you're right. The chambered mufflers do sound really nice. Zephyr R&D chimes in with, would love my opinion on a new car. Looking for a manual 2+2 driver's handling platform. I'm all over the place. 5th gen Z28, 6th gen SS1LE, wide body Scat Pack, BMW M2, which is a fantastic car to drive, by the way. BRZ, and GTS, others. Well, I mean, that's the murderer's row of strong handling cars. I mean, you cannot go wrong with a Cayman. The M2 is also a fantastic handling car as well. If you're planning on taking the car to any closed circuit tracks, I can tell you that the Cayman will do very well. The M2 will probably be more satisfying to drive, although the Cayman is like taking a scalpel to a lot of fun to drive. Let's see, 5th gen Z28, dude, let me just tell you this right now. If that car is in your, go for it, but just remember, you're dealing with an LS7, so, you know, I'd probably have the heads reworked before you started doing a whole lot of, tearing it up with that car. 6th gen SS1LE, they're fun, but I don't know that I would jump on board with that. From a durability standpoint, they're great, but you've listed some cars that are actually better in terms of being a more well-balanced vehicle for just, you know, handling, playing around, and let me just say this, let me put it to you like this. The Cayman and the M2 are more focused cars than the 1LE is in one respect, and that is that they are more refined. I think that if you drive, especially the Cayman and then the 1LE, I think you're going to come back with a brand new sense of what handling really feels like. I've been on the Porsche Tour, and I was actually able to run a Boxster S on the Porsche Tour, and I can tell you, in its element, that platform, the Cayman, the Boxster, even the M2 is just about untouchable. So my suggestion is to drive them, get a good feel for what they are. But, you know, realistically, I don't think that you're going to find anything better than what you posted. Now, the wide body Scat Pack's a lot of fun to drive, but if you're looking for something that is going to be a true handling car, it's not that the Scat Pack won't handle, it's just going to handle like a little bit larger car. I will say this, a large car on a closed circuit is actually a lot of fun to drive because you feel the weight transfer. I mean, you're in it. You're managing basically a freighter going around that track, and that's not a bad thing. They handle well, they carry themselves very well, but in terms of being confidence inspiring, that'll be nothing like an M2 or a Cayman. Scott 426, what up? What's up, man? Says what's up. See, Johnny Holloman says he has a 392 Scat Pack shaker as a nice open view air filter when hood's open, but how does it compare with the Hellcats air box with the Hellcats air filter? It's not as good in terms of managing heat, but realistically, once you get moving with that car, your inlet air temps are going to drop, and it's really not going to matter. If you're taking it to the drag strip, just keep the hood open for as long as you can. Run the car for just a little bit, clear out any heat that's in the system, and you'll be good to go. That's actually, the shaker actually has a really good inlet system, a little bit better than the TA in my opinion. Phoenix98 checking in, get them thumbs up. Yeah, get them thumbs up, man. Give me some love or something. Let's see, Aiden G. I like Bugatti Veyrons. They go 240 miles an hour. Indeed, they can go 240 miles an hour. I don't know if I'd want to go 240 miles an hour in one of those things. Actually, that'd be a ride. I'd love to do that. What am I talking about? Fitz Films Garage says, rim backspacing, yes. What is the smallest backspacing we can run on Chargers? 6.25 inch. I have a 2013 Charger RT Road and Track Daytona Edition with Super Track Pack. You know, I'm not really sure as far as back. 6.25 seems like a little bit much. The problem you're going to run into with that, though, is, wait, you say a Charger or a Challenger? I just missed it. Charger. Good thing with the Charger is that you've got a little bit more room back there to play with than the Challengers do. So I've got more experience with the Challengers. Realistically, you can get away with more of the Charger because you have more room, but I wouldn't necessarily tempt fate because all those things are built a little bit differently. Just check for any rub. But 6.25 sounds about right on a Charger, but that might be pushing it. Lulu is sending me something I don't understand. Let's see. Al's Dream. What do you think of roll racing between a Z06 and a Hellcat? I think the Hellcat would definitely take it. I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I tell you what, the Z06 will be doing its best to stay on the rear fender of that Hellcat right up until probably, I don't know, middle of fourth gear. That Z06 is going to start reeling that Hellcat in pretty quickly. That's actually the Corvette's wheelhouse. It's not really a good place to try to pick a race. I can tell you that the Z06 from a roll, that car just keeps pulling and pulling and pulling. Close race, but I think the Z06 edge on the. Let's see. Glenn Myers checking in with want. I want stuff too. A lot of stuff. Anybody hiring? Hadi Badoon says recently got his 392 Charger. Sorry. Got his 392 Charger 93 octane tune, put down 466 wheel horsepower, 497 torque. Trying to within $1,500 budget. Here's what I would do with that, man. Honestly, you know, if you're really splitting hairs, a lighter wheel and tire package, drop a little bit of rolling resistance or, you know, just inertial resistance. Pull some weight out of the car too. But aside from that, I mean, you're sitting in a pretty good spot. I mean, if you're making 466 and 497 is pretty common on a dyno jet for these cars. I really wouldn't, I wouldn't put too much, let's say, emphasis on buying up more stuff for it. I would look more into managing a little bit better what you've got. So if you've got a ported throttle body, like a true Fastman ported throttle body, might be if you don't have one, that would be a good place to start. A ported throttle body will help you. A ported intake manifold will help you a little bit there too. But again, with a 392, you're going to start splitting hairs. Probably the better idea would be to make sure that that transmission is tuned properly and your shift points are set at the right points, and basically keep it, keep it about where you're at moving forward. Pull a little bit out of the torque management, but not too much. Get a little bit better scheduling for your downshifts, really, as opposed to moving shift points up or down. Stock shift points actually a pretty good spot for 392s, but you are going to want to, have the thing where it's a little bit more aggressive in the trans tune. I think that'd be all you need, man. Don't go spending a whole bunch of money when you don't need to. Unless you want to throw nitrous at it. And then I say don't do that. Glenn Myers asks, he was looking into doing a rear gear swap for his 5.7. He'd say he did this years ago on the 5.0, made a world of difference. Yes, it did. Really woke that thing up, I bet. I know it did with mine. The question is it tune necessary for it to work right? And does anything else need to be done? Technically, no. You don't have to do a tune because the wheel speed sensors are not part of the transmission. They're actually not, don't worry about a tune. What I will say, though, is don't go too aggressive with them. The HB70 has very aggressive gear ratios. So I would say a 370 gear swap would be about as aggressive as I would go. And make sure you're budgeting plenty of tires. I will say that you will absolutely need you're going to need some tire for that thing, though, here pretty soon. I'm guessing this is an 8-speed car. If it is, go with that 370 out of a Hellcat with a manual transmission, but keep in mind they are pricey. Some guys will actually go so far as to put the 392 in those cars. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it will get real buzzy going down the freeway. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I'd say stick with 370s. Works well with the gear ratios that are in the car now, and you put that thing on a drag pack and you'll be hurting a lot of feelings with that thing for sure. Plus, 5.7s are a freaking riot, man. I love those cars. Everybody downs on them, man. I still think I should have bought one just to have sitting around. So get into that. So what would be my combination for a 5.7? Engine tune, trans tune, pick headers. It doesn't matter if they're short tube or long tube. Just get the logs out of there. Anybody's cat back. It doesn't matter which one. Just pick one that sounds good. But yeah, that 370 gear, put that thing on a drag pack and just got piss off a bunch of Mustangs and Camaros. And make sure they know it's a 5.7 too. Let's see. Zendalis, hope I'm saying that right. Chimes in with, just got a 16 scat pack and learning a lot from me and my videos. Well, thank you. I'm hoping I'm steering you in the right direction. It says just wants to say thanks and for me shooting my knowledge on the rest of us. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. Donald Powers, time for a whiteboard professor. You know, I've actually thought of that at one point. Actually, I do have a whiteboard, and on that whiteboard, I've got dumb little things like, you know, oil filters to get for my wife's Jeep, or, you know, the cars, and it'll have like topics on there that would be for upcoming shows that never really seem to happen. I end up sitting down and think, I forget that I've got it. I need to come in here and post it on the wall over here. Hemi Head. Oh, this is a good topic. Says he ran without a catch can for about 40 miles and was surprised at how much oil coated the inside of the intake. Ran for 3,000 miles with it and didn't have hardly any coating. Is the oil really an issue or not? Okay, so here's the thing. The catch can, the whole catch can thing is, there's part of it that does work. And I want to make sure that I say that up front, because I don't want anything else that I say to be misconstrued. Catch cans do absolutely work, and they are an important durability modification that I would suggest for a long-term ownership of any vehicle. But here's the thing. And you've got to understand the percentage of those vapors that it's collecting and what the vapors are in general, because, you know, people say an oil catch can. So let me stop everybody right there. First of all, one of the primary things that you're catching is condensation. That's one of the first things that you're catching from going through your engine. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but as the car is warming up, coming to temperature, any atmospheric, basically water, you know, it condenses out of the atmosphere into the oil. That's what you're collecting. You're just not running it through the intake. But keep in mind that there is some oil vapor associated with that. Typically, that will actually burn off and boil off in your catch can. So you'll have water that'll actually evaporate through the catch can. If you've ever felt your catch can after you've really hot, for obvious reasons, you've got engine gases going through the thing. You are collecting some of that bypass oil vapor, but keep in mind, you're only collecting a percentage of it. If you look at any Hemi, whether it's got a catch can or not, almost every single one of them on the intake manifold on the right kind of and on every single one that I've ever pulled the intake off of that I can remember off the top of my head, there's always been a little bit of oil pooling on the intake valves themselves. Now, that's not to say that the catch can is not doing its job. It's just that there's only so much what's known as a nucleation site to bring the vapor out of atomization and to bring it basically into a spot where that steel wool is. That is a collection spot. The vapor is hitting that steel wool and it's coming out of suspension. That's what makes it drop into the can. So in some respects, you're still into your intake manifold. Now, well, how much stake or how much nucleation media, in this case, would it take to actually that vapor is, you know, the atomized water? I don't know, but it would be a ton. And so just to mitigate that a little bit is still a good thing. So anyway, keep that, you know, in the back of your mind when you're looking at the, you know, how much of the oil is actually running through that thing. There's going to be quite a bit actually that's still going to be getting past it. Gorgeous Scat 392 chimes in with just joined. How do you like your new Hellcat? Man, I am loving that car for a ton of reasons. I mean, one of the about it is, you know, it's cool to drive a stock car. I know that sounds kind of weird with, you know, all the, you know, the modded cars and everybody just gets real about modified cars on the internet, but for me, you know, for somebody has been around a lot of really fast cars, these are the cars, you know, on a Mustang dyno make 800 plus horsepower, anywhere on a, listen, anything on a Mustang dyno that makes over the rear wood properly calibrated, that's going to get your attention real quickly. And I'll tell you something, it's kind of cool to drive something that doesn't feel like any good time. So and I got no complaints, man. I really don't. I can't think of anything that I really would want to change to the car, other than, maybe sometime down the line, a little bit of transmission tuning, maybe a little bit of fueling tuning. But man, aside from that, I am loving that car, having a riot with it. It went 10.70 at 126 and change the other night, so I can't really complain about that. Toby Rama checks in with, is there going to be a point where Ford will have to go somewhere like Spicer for a trans because it would cost too much in R&D to make a new torque? Listen, torque shift to take the power and torque. I'll tell you something, man. I don't know what to say about that, man. I don't like to kick anybody when they're down. I know a lot of guys are having problems with the transmissions in the Mustangs, and to this day, I don't understand how anybody can make a transmission in this day and age without having more durable shift forks. To put this into perspective, I was busting shift forks on T5 transmissions back when I was a kid. I don't see how the cost could be any more to put, a billet aluminum or some other steel. Would be even better, to be honest with you. Solid steel shift fork in those cars. It can't cost any more, and it could only add in durability. So is it a cost-saving thing? I don't know, but damn, it sucks to even have to think about stuff like that. Like, you can't buy your car, take it out and go play with it and worry about it breaking, only to have it in the back of your head that if you take it to the dealership for warranty repair, they might kick you out. That's not cool, Ford. They should have done a little bit better with that. But I don't know. The only time will tell. I would like to see some level of durability built back into the Mustang, because the Mustang, for the longest time, was, not only did it carry the name for pony cars when everybody else got out, but I mean, it was kind of the gold standard for guys that wanted to buy a car and just have fun with it, and for a lot of guys, it's their first taste of, rolling through gears and banging gears. I mean, don't give them something that's going to put a bad taste in their mouth. So anyway, I'm right there with you. I hope they can get it engineered on their own. Lulu checking in with El Professor. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Black Scat 392. Might be a silly question, but how do you feel about the MMX intake manifold and MMX 87 throttle body on a 392 Scat Pack with 100 shot of dope tune? Well, I wouldn't use their ported throttle body. I would get the Fastman True ported throttle body. And as far as that intake manifold goes, they're good, but here's the deal. The problem with porting an intake is not to actually sculpt the throat of those things to get them to actually flow properly. And all the data that I have on the stock intake manifold, even with my ports on it, there's I'm looking at called basically it's the intake manifold KPA. It's the kilopascals, or basically how much vacuum is there at wide open throttle. And even with a lot of reworking, you're still going to have a small amount of vacuum in that intake manifold. Whereas with the LS combinations, you really don't. I mean, you got an intake that is flows so much better than the stock Hemis. And the only reason why I'm bringing that up is there's only so much you can really get away with the stock manifold. I would say MMX has a good manifold. Go with the Fastman throttle body, and I think you'll be happy all the way around. And yeah, you hit it with 100 shot. I mean, you're feeding it all the oxygen it can handle through the nitrous oxide anyway. So at that point, really, it's kind of half a dozen to another, but stick with that larger throttle body. It'll definitely do you some favors if you're running nitrous. Let's see. Zephyr R&D says, thank you, sir. Would I elaborate on the Z28 and the LS7? Also thought C7 Grand Sport. That's actually a really good car. Don't sleep on that car. I love that car. Not sure if I want another daily without some sort of rear seat area though. So the Z28 and the LS7, it's a pretty well documented problem in the LS community with the LS7s. They had a bad habit of dropping exhaust valves. I don't really think that it's that big of an issue, but it's always something good to look at. Z28s have a nasty habit of being run hard. So, this is one of those caveat emptor things, buyer beware. Take a look at the service history of that car. Mileage could also play a part in it. I'm not sure when I'm not sure what the build dates are for the issues with the LS7, but I've seen them kind of scattered all over the place. So just something to consider if you're looking at that Z28. It just they have an issue with dropping valves, and that's just kind of the way it goes. Endless Combo, hey, thank you very much for the donation to the cause. Beer money, I'll take it, man. Hell yeah. And the fridge is running almost dry, man. I don't know what I'm going to have to do. Shiner is calling, brother. Thank you so very much. I do appreciate that. Let's see. Toby Rama checks in with Spicer. Oh, there we go. Spicer makes a transfer semis, and the torque shift is the trans and the Super Duty for F250, F350. Man, I'll tell you what, you got Spicer and Allison. They, both known for making pretty stout transmissions on the commercial side. I don't know if they started making one, that'd be great, but I don't know that too many manufacturers are going to keep going to the aftermarket for those transmissions. But it'd be great if they did. Let's see. AJ checks in with, you got a 17 Charger RT57, asks, do I need to unlock the PCM or get a tuner for a differential swap? Nope, shouldn't have to do anything with that. Says he really doesn't want to void the warranty. That's why he's leaning towards that mod. No, you shouldn't have to. Again, the wheel speed sensor is what it's picking up or RPM, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. What I mean by RPM is the actual RPM of the wheels, which would tell the speedometer how fast you're going. That being said, though, depending on what gear you go with, in some cases, you can run into a situation where predictive shifting won't pick up on the fact that you've got a gear. It doesn't know it because there's no programming for it. So what'll happen is you could hit, basically it's a fault. It's not really a limiter, but the TCM will think that you're coming up on a limiter too quickly. So it'll initiate the shift either a little bit late, or you'll basically get, in some cases, it'll try to shift early. Different cars act differently when it comes to gears, and there's really no good reason why, at least not that I can see. I think it has more to do with the adaptive strategy that we just don't have access to. For every parameter that we have access to in tuning, there's easily 10 that we don't. And so the predictive shifting is part of that. But keep that in the back of your mind. But I haven't heard of anybody having any issues with a 370 gear. 392, yeah, maybe. Let's see. Life as Lee checks in with, says he traded in his 392 for a 2016 Hellcat with 10,000 miles for 50 grand. Good deal on the car. Nice car. What do you think would win, Z01 or Hellcat in a roll race? Best tires for the street, 305, Mickey Thompsons, or Nittos? I'm going to start at the bottom of that one and go Nittos straight away all the time. Don't mess with the Mickey Thompsons for street use. Asked what I think would win, Z01 or Hellcat in a roll race. Man, I gotta give the nod to the ZL1. I mean, they're obviously a lot lighter, more aerodynamic, and you're not saying how fast you're roll racing too. Now, if it's me roll racing, the Vet's going to win because I don't shut down until 160. But a lot of guys will run 60 to 140, 60 to 130. That's going to be a pretty tight race. The Vet will be starting to reel in that Hellcat just a little bit at that point, but just depends on who gets the hit. Typically, the way that it works, especially if the Vet is an automatic, is the Hellcat will get out on a little bit and the Hellcat will start to reel it in. It's going to depend on the driving skill of the driver if it's a manual car. But either way, outcome's going to be about the same. Zephyr R&D says, appreciates the answer. It's a pretty good way to end his birthday night. Happy birthday. Good job, here. I like it. Ray Perez says, Frankenstein heads are really great, but he's seen them on stock motors only. Yeah. See, the thing is that ported heads on a Hemi, why would you do it almost? I mean, the reality here is that if you put ported heads on the car, you're going to have done two things. One, put a bigger camshaft in it to take advantage of the extra airflow because you're just not hanging the valve open long enough with the stock cam. And in that respect, the stock heads flow almost 340 CFM. To put that in perspective, that's like big block numbers from the 60s. And by the way, that would be a ported set of really good cast. Really hard to beat the stock cylinder heads from just a flow perspective. And from a performance perspective, you're just not going to really improve upon that unless you're going with higher compression and a much more radical camshaft. In that respect, yeah, I can see it being a benefit. But when I say higher compression, I'm going to want to see something like 12.5 or 13 to 1. I want to see a camshaft at 50 on a 392 or a 426 that's making duration numbers fall in line somewhere around 236 on the exhaust, around 240-ish, 242. And maybe bring the intake down a little bit. Let's say 232 on the intake and 242 on the exhaust before you're really ever going to be able to take advantage of those heads. And once again, your intake manifold is going to be your limitation, so you're stuck there. So again, if it's a nitrous combination that you're building, then yeah, you're going to want to have as much flow there as you can because nitrous oxide actually drags your effective RPM down because of volumetric efficiency. But realistically speaking, if it's an NA combo, man, don't sweat it. Stick with the stock heads. Al's Dream chimes in with, I'm trying to make my Hellcat a bit faster. What's a cheap mod to do? I don't want to void my warranty. I'll tell you the best modification you can do for your Hellcat that will not void the warranty, that will absolutely yield results, is go with a drag pack wheel and tire setup. My car is bone stock. It is as stock as a stock car can get, all the way down to the original Hellcat air filter, stock everything. I mean, what else can you say about a stock car other than it's stock? And I'm running what are they? Raystar, Dragstar. You've seen it in the pictures, those things. Look, they're a 17-inch wheel on the back, 18 up front. With the you are going to have to get the shorter end links from, I think B Woody sells them. It'll take you longer to get the car set up and lifted than it'll take you to swap out the parts. But here's the thing: won't void the warranty. Take that thing to the drag strip, have a ball with it. That's going to get you the best ET for the money. It's not cheap. You're going to have to get a set of tires, get the rims, lug nuts, everything else. But that being said, you can bolt up a set of Mickey Thompson ET Street R's, get the Mickey Thompson radials up front. You'll have the identical combination of what I've got, be able to go out and have a ride with that car. I would probably suggest a drive shaft at some point. Mainly just it's a durability modification more than anything else. Peace of mind, that's worth it to me. So, but aside from that, that's the way that I would go. And as far as anything else goes, air filters or this contraption or that doodad, man, just don't do it. You'll literally be chasing your tail at some point because it just go with the drag wheel and tire package. You'll thank me. You'll have a ride. You'll have a blast. You'll impress your friends by going 1070s with your stock Hellcat, and the rest will be history. James to the Jammo says he's having heads and cam done. Good deal, man. Make sure that it is tuned properly, and don't be surprised when you do have it tuned that you may, have to come back and have some, just have some fresh ups, with your tune early on, because drivability, cold start, things like that can definitely be a bit of an issue. Symphonics chimes in saying, I remember you saying you never lost to a headers cam C6. That is technically true in Model 392. My understanding is that C6 with those mods should be running high 10s. Actually, not with a manual transmission, and I can tell you this, what they should be running and what they do run, I will agree with you, are two completely different situations. You got to remember with the Vet that a heads cam intake car on a manual transmission Vet is a little bit of a bear to get out of the hole. And that car is playing catch up literally all the way down the track. And I would venture to say that of the victories that I've had over that particular combination, and sorry, I just had a, so I actually had one guy that wouldn't even talk to me in the pits after I beat his car twice. That was actually pretty funny. Anyway, the biggest problem that you'll run into is a lot of times those guys will get antsy as they're trying to reel you in, and they'll miss a shift. Had that happen to me a few times too. But that being said, just because somebody says it's going to run 10s does not mean it's going to. I have seen more combinations that were supposed to run a number that didn't run a number that really had guys upset. So, you know, take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. A lot of it is hype. In reality, in real life, when you know you've got real people driving these things and we're not racing on dynos, the reality is something completely different. Now, that being said, from a roll race, freaking heads cam Vet would walk all over that 392. And I know this because I owned a heads cam Vet. So I know what they're capable of. And by the way, it was an 04 Z06 with a Mayhem 2 cam, little bit of head work done and a ported intake manifold. And that car was trapping 122, 123 miles an hour, running, 11.5s, 11.4s. So that's with me driving it. That's a lightweight car running on bias ply tires, drag pack setup, the whole bit, but still had the stock rear end, 342 gears. So believe me, I know what the cars are capable of, but the reality is on a drag strip, that 392 is more than capable of dealing with it. James is saying heads cam intake done, not void warranty. Well, that ain't going to happen. You're going to void your warranty unless, hang on, did you say it was a 5.7? If it's a 5.7 and you get one of the Scat Pack packages done by the dealership, then you can retain warranty. So keep that in the back of your mind. Let's see. Gorgeous Scat 392 chimes in with that's awesome. Happy for you. Thank you very much. Says, I've seen one of those dyno for around 645. That's a great number. Actually, that would be on a dyno jet. On the Mustang dyno, Hellcats are lucky, and I mean doing real good to make 595 to the rear wheels. Typically, Hellcats are going to chime in somewhere just south of about 590 to the rear wheel, unless it's on a cool down pass. The best I've ever seen is just a tick over 600. And that car was about as close to a factory freak as you can get. But no, they are a riot. Love them. So Audie checks back in saying, so on a tune, 87 mil throttle body and ported intake manifold, what's the wheel horsepower gain? Is it really worth it? Says he just raced an 18 E85 Mustang. He said he beat him by a car and he's trying to get some Hemi revenge here. So here's my thoughts on that. Don't go with the 87, go with the 84. The 87 is useless on that stock intake manifold. And I know because I've ported quite a few now of those intake manifolds, and there's so much work that has to be done to that intake manifold to get an 87 to actually work that is simply not worth it. 84 is actually the sweet spot for that intake. And as far as, how much horsepower is it worth? Man, it's tough to say. I mean, you're looking at probably that combination should be worth maybe 10 to the wheels, but it's going to depend on conditions, engine temp, and everything else. But all things being equal, maybe 10. I wouldn't rely on it to really get you to the promised land, but it will wake up in terms of throttle response and just driving the thing around town. It does make it a little bit more fun to drive, and shouldn't really need a tune for it. Let's see. Braxton Wright chimes in and says 6.1 crate. I guess you're asking about the 6.1 crate engine. Oh, they're good. 4.25 horse. Depends on what you're putting it in, but a lot of guys use those for street rods and love them. Inexpensive, and they're simple too, which is one of the endearing points of the 6.1. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if it weren't for variable cam technology in the 6.4, you know, punching out a 6.1 a little bit with a camshaft, extrude hone that intake manifold, and you got yourself a strong performing engine. Let's see. Show Me Mopar checks in. B. Mason, what's up? Do I miss my 392? A little bit. I'll get to that here in just a second. It says you test drove a Hellcat. Felt like anywhere but track. Cars trying to kill him. Yeah, felt heavier than your Scat Pack, which it will. How usable is that power? It made me love my 392 more. Any thoughts? So I've actually put together a video that actually really does get into this. My 392 versus my Hellcat, and do I miss it? And the weird thing is about 3/4 of the way through that video, it's almost like I got writer's block. I could really feel myself wandering way off topic and more than I normally do, right? But in short, well, is the power usable with the Hellcat? Yeah, but it takes a lot more finesse. I've been able to match my best on the street 0 to 60 times with my 392 with my Hellcat, but it's a lot more work. I mean, by comparative standards, the 392 is basically super simple. Just a little bit of, you know, throttle application technique to keep the tires from, you know, to keep from shocking the tires on the launch. And it was pretty much clockwork running 3.7, 3.8, 0 to 60s with that car. The Hellcat, I'm getting to the point now where I'm on the street, pretty consistent 3.7, 3.8 as well. But I mean, it's hit and miss, and I'm launching it in second gear. So not to spoil the video, but realistically, when you're talking about the Hellcat versus 392, you're talking about the difference between a very fun car and a fast car. And I'm choosing those words carefully. The 392 is very fun to drive. It's very fun to launch on a drag radial. You get this instant satisfaction with the 392. And the Hellcat is just not just out playing around with them. And the Hellcat is a fast car, but I wouldn't call it a very fast car. There are a lot of cars out there running 9-second quarter mile times, albeit, you know, modified. Now, if we're talking about stock, the Hellcat is an extremely fast car. But what we're talking about here is just the driving experience in general. And what I found as far as, you know, what is the difference between the two? You know, the 392 cars, with the way that they're geared, the power that they're making, with the power delivery that they give in terms of throttle response, it's such an eager car. It's such a fun car. It's like it wants to have fun. It's like you're hanging out with that buddy, you know, that buddy of yours that you're always kind of getting into trouble with. That's like having a 392 car. It's always, you know, one more shot. You know what I mean? You know, just, you know, go talk to her, go talk to her. That's the buddy that the 392 is, always encouraging you to have fun. The Hellcat, on the other hand, is a little bit different. He's like that buddy that you know can kind of kick your ass, and he's also a little bit better looking. So instead of, hey, go talk to that girl, he's the guy going to talk to the girl. That's kind of the Hellcat in a nutshell. But, you know, when, again, you're talking about a fun car with the 392, do I miss it? Yeah, man, there's times where I do miss it, but all I got to do is take the Hellcat for a drive, and I stop missing it so much. For sure. Show Me Mopar says, sure, I will get lit up for that comment. Well, I tell you what, I appreciate that. No, again, you know, it's one of those things where you know, the times when I miss the 392 is when I just want to go out and play. You know, I do that with the Hellcat, and it's, you know, kind of a learning experience because, again, you know, I'm used to cars that are making significantly more power than the Hellcat. I mean, just modified Hellcats. It is a bit refreshing to be able to just play with a stock Hellcat. And from that perspective, it is a ton of fun. And I don't know, it's tough to beat a stock Hellcat for fun factor and for durability as well. And that, by the way, that peace of mind for me is also a lot of fun as well. Not that the 392s aren't durable. It's just that, God, the Hellcat's just that much more robust. Jazz Hellcat says, sorry, watching OU West Virginia game. Hey, I'll tell you what, I'm watching a little bit of football today, not too much. Been busy with projects around the house. I'm actually trying to bring my dishwasher back into the land of living. spare the details, but it's a 1962 Frigidaire Imperial, by the way, that I'm bringing back to life. Show me Mopar checks in. Money not the issue. Could have bought it, just really made clear how nice and usable a 392 is. That's all you can say. I mean, if that's the best, if that's the comment you can give a 392, then it cannot get a higher compliment than that. The power is usable all right on a downshift, especially if you're driving on asphalt. 392 is not going to try to get you killed. It's going to try to have it, have you having fun. You map the throttle on a Hellcat on an asphalt road, you're going to learn the new meaning of pucker factor. Let's see what we got in here. Gorgeous Scat. Oh, good note. AJ says good note. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Gorgeous Scat chimes in with one more question. Is the Hemi Fever tune worth it in your opinion? Everyone says it really wakes up their Hemi. I cannot get into talking about other tuners on my channel with my affiliation with Pike's Performance. Basically, I've seen his tunes. Fever does good work. There's a lot of tuners that do good work. I've had a Hemi Fever tune on my Ram 1500, and I can tell you that it nearly blew my truck up. So take that for what it's worth. That said, look, let me reset. I'm not going to say that Hemi Fever's tunes are bad. They're not. They work for a lot of folks. It just was a little bit too aggressive for my truck. It was probably a fuel quality issue on my part. James B checking in with thumbs up. Thumbs up for you. Toby Rama checks in. What makes the 3/4 shift frightening in a high-power manual car? What makes the 3/4 shift spooky is in a lot of the cars, and especially some of the cars that I've driven, the issue on the 3/4 shift is that the higher horsepower cars can blow the tires up on the 3/4 shift. My Vet is a good example of this. I had, and a lot of it has to do with the tire selection that you're running with. I was running Nitto 555s on the back of that Vet as my daily tire. And that car on the 3/4 shift on the power shift would actually spin the tires, not hard, but I mean, it would give a nice, decent chirp. Add even more power to that, and the tire just still can't keep up with what the car is actually able to put down. The other thing is a lot of cars nowadays are independent rear suspension. The reason why that's a problem is just the geometry of the tires. As the suspension loads up, it'll squat. When it squats, you're pulling contact patch off of the ground. It's the reason why it's hard to launch an independent rear suspension car in comparison to a solid rear axle. So it just kind of exacerbates the problem a little bit. So what I would say is the combination of tires either not being sticky enough, suspension geometry, the car just isn't going to hook as well. And thirdly, the independent rear suspension cars do have a tendency to wheel hop a little bit. So as opposed to planing the power, when that suspension rolls up, your contact patch isn't as consistent, and so you can get a little bit of wheel hop out of that. And also with suspension geometry and different suspension components in there, that can cause a problem. Anyway, the long story is my car actually, I've had a situation where it wall hunted at about 95 miles an hour on that 3/4 shift, which was real spooky. A lot of cars have had that happen before. The other thing is the 4.3 wide open throttle downshift. My car would absolutely haze the tires on that 3/4 downshift. And yeah, that's when I put drag radials on the back of it and never looked back. Taylor Walker asked, would I recommend the NT Tri-5s? Absolutely. They're awesome tires. I've actually run Nitto Tri-5s on, let me think about this. I've run Nitto Tri-5s on literally every car that I've ever owned that was a performance car. I've never had a bad experience with Tri-5s, aside from when I've tried to overpower them. And as far as a drag radial goes, they are the absolute best drag radial, in my opinion, for as a tire that will handle all things that you want to do with it. Take it to the drag strip, take it to on a road track, on a road trip. Air them up to about 38 PSI, take them on an autocross, do whatever you want with them. You can have a lot of fun with those tires, and they don't wear out as quickly as the Mickey Thompsons do. But as far as a good overall daily tire, it's real hard to beat a Nitto Tri-5, and I wouldn't even try to. The G2s, I've heard some decent things about them, but I mean, damn, dude, Tri-5. It's a tried and true thing. It's kind of like the AR-15 of tires. Let's see. Beat Vlad K asks, how much should I expect to pay to have long tube headers installed on a 14 Charger RT? And do I think there will be any worries with warranty with that mod? I have a lifetime powertrain warranty. Let's talk about the warranty first. I don't think you'll have a problem with the warranty. Laws are such that the dealership would have to prove that the long tubes would create the problem. Now, that being said, you will need a tune to have the long tubes work properly, and that's the loophole where they'll get you, because and the reason why is because there's a pulse timing calculator basically in the ECU. Basically, it tells the computer from the time the cylinder fires when the first O2 should see a reading. If it's a long tube, that timing is going to be different. So to get the long tubes to actually work right with the tune, you are going to need, or with the car, you're going to need a tune. That's not to say it's absolutely necessary, but it's as close to absolutely necessary as you can get. Realistically speaking, though, if you threw them on without a tune, I don't think you would run into a problem per se, but it will be a sticking point, and it could be a spot where a dealership would try to hang you up as far as, warranty coverage, things like that. There's nothing really that long tubes will do that will harm your engine or hurt performance, but I would only suggest doing long tubes if you're going to have a tune to go along with it. So and not to mention you say you got a 14 Charger RT. Guessing it's a 5.7. It's not going to hurt anything, I don't think. Just keep in mind that if you go into the catalog, I think Mopar's actually got an exhaust system that will work with that car. I believe it uses the 6.4 manifolds and a 6.4 catback. Take a look at that before you look into long as you think you are, mainly because the cam profile, it just doesn't really allow you to take advantage of long tubes. Let's see. High Octane RT chimes in. You got a 9-inch. I have 9-inch wheels in the back, right? What are my thoughts on 305 radials on the 9-inch wheel? Actually, I've got 9.5s on the back if it's stock. Right now, I've got the 10.5s, the replicas on the back of the Hellcat. Those came off my 392. What are my thoughts on 305 radials on a 9-inch wheel? It's not a good idea. Not any favors. Your contact patch is going to be kind of jacked up because the tire is going to bulge quite a bit. My recommendation is go with 275s. A couple of reasons. One, they weigh less, and if you're running at stock, let's see, if you're running stock power levels, or even elevated stock power levels, or even elevated power levels over than stock, the 275 will hook up just fine. Don't worry about the width. And actually, I think they look a little bit better too. Plus, you don't have to worry about them rubbing. Let's see. Gorgeous Scat checks in with, he says he's got the Nitto Tri-5s, Nitto Tri-5s on his 392. Says he really has to have them hot to get traction at all. And they're 295s. Yeah, I mean, you do have to heat them up. But that's just part of it when you're messing with those tires. They do like to be a little bit on the hot side. I will say that. Justin Bacon chimes in. Good evening, Brian. Good evening, Justin. Jeffrey Bender, the Enforcer. What is happening, Brian? What's happening, Jeffrey? How you doing? Let's see. Symphonics asks, so would an auto C6 with those mods and a good driver versus my 392 yield that much better results? Actually, an auto would say C5 or C6. Auto C6 would give any 392 all it can handle and then some. But you'd have to go with a different converter and potentially a different rear gear to really get the most out of that combination. And man, most of those guys just are not willing to go through that headache, myself included. I don't know if I would want to have a vet that was that focused, mainly because anytime you start throwing a lot of cam in an engine and a lot of torque converter, that loose torque converter that works really well at the drag strip, that performance does not necessarily translate well to the street. And that's something that, you know, it's a personal preference. There's a lot of guys that run a lot of converter on the street and don't have a problem with it. But if you've got any experience with this stuff whatsoever, you'll find that it's a very subjective point of view. Loose converter on the street, most guys will get tired of that real quickly. So it's just it's an annoying thing where you're rolling into the throttle and the car just doesn't really want to go, and you're kind of, you know, it's a non-responsive thing on the street. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Let's see. Toby Ramos asking, oh, Jay Pombo, sup, homie, how you doing? Toby Ramos says, what times can a 91 Dakota 500 horsepower, wheel horsepower 3170 pounds at about 200 pounds to the factory weight rating with empty drag slicks, 100 shot of nitrous run? It's going to depend on gearing. It's going to depend on a lot of stuff. But at that level, 3,100 pounds, I'd say be pretty easily in the 1170, 1150 range. Racer X, what's up? Good checking you in, man. Hope all is well. Team Hellcat. Yes, indeed. We are now Team Hellcat. I am now part of the fold. He is, Racer X saying he's pretty happy with his little sedan. Yeah, that little sedan scoots. It's got some pep to it, I would say. Got a lot of pep to it. Freaking mid 9-second full weight Charger. Hey, if y'all haven't seen it, head over to Racer X. It's RACER capital X. Check him out. Formerly Excessive. He's got a Pipes Performance Bravo package out there wrecking shop up in Dallas. Go check his page out. You'll like it. He's got a lot of fun content on there too. See, Jay Pumba chimes in with more thumbs up equals more people reached. Yeah, no kidding, man. We got 47 of y'all watching this and only 30 thumbs up. Come on, man. Give me a little love, will you? SRT Craze coming in. I just turned in and heard the last part of the 6-1 discussion and missed it. Says he's got a 2010 Challenger SRT8 and do not hear of a lot of discussions about the 6-1s these days. Yeah, man, I'll tell you something. You know, the 6-1 doesn't get the respect that it deserves. You know, the 6.4 is a more powerful engine, but it also has the added benefit of that HP 70 automatic transmission backing it up. I got to tell you, love me some 6.1. The cool thing about the 6.1 is that it is a significantly more simple platform if you want to do mods. You know, they respond fairly well to camshafts. You can always get the intake manifold extrude home because it's aluminum. No issues with multi-displacement system lifters or any of that kind of stuff. You can just kind of jump right into that engine. And with even with a fairly mild camshaft, ported intake, Stanky tie bar collars set up on it just for durability if you wanted to, 080 push rods, Hellcat lifters, that whole setup right there. I mean, you can have an engine that's making 480, 490 horsepower to the flywheel, have something that's a lot of fun, sounds good, reliable, durable, the whole bit, basically a boat motor in your car. Have something that makes a good amount of torque, a good amount of horsepower. That engine is, if I were to build a project, let's say if I'm, you know, were to put together like an old, like that truck that was at the shop, that 62 D100 that I freaking fell in love with, or an old Dart, you know, some type of an E-body, I would probably go with that combination every single time because you kind of get the best of all worlds. You get the modern, you know, the performance of a modern Hemi engine with the durability of a modern Hemi engine, with part availability of a modern Hemi engine, all the power that you could possibly need in a simple platform. So I really love those engines, and I wish that they did get more respect and had a little bit better following, but it's easy to find. It's easy to see why they don't in one respect. You know, the 6.4 with its torque down low, which is significant over the 6.1, and with the ability of the intake manifold to, you know, switch with that variable intake manifold, makes good power pretty much everywhere. It doesn't mean that it's a better engine. It just means it's a little bit different. And, you know, because it makes more power and goes down the track quicker, people discount it. But the 6.1, but they shouldn't. The 6.1's a great engine. Mark R says, roll race M6 Hellcat versus A8. Who wins? Both have sticky tires. Oh, man, I tell you this, but the A8 is probably going to walk away with it. Mainly because the A8 is going to have a couple more gears to play with in that speed range. So the A8 is going to get the jump. The 6-speed is probably going to start kind of maybe reeling it in after about the first 2 seconds of the race. But after that, there's going to be a couple more gear changes that the A8 is going to have that the 6 won't. So just something to consider. That's assuming that the A8 or the manual doesn't light the tires up if you do a power shift from fourth into third. If you're just doing a hit, actually, I take it back. It depends on how hard or how soon the A8 actually, if he's already in the gear, it'd be close, but I'd probably put my money on the A8. That thing is just such a good performing transmission. And I think part of that question might also, kind of go in line with the powertrain. The A8 versus the manual, there's not that big of a difference between the two. You put the two on a dyno, and honestly, much of a difference in terms of power output between the two. So something to consider there as well. That A8 is just very efficient. Let's see. Jay Poma, buy 4 tires for the price of 3 today in my local Mopar Facebook group. Kind of got fancy. Hey, man, if you get 3 for the price of, or 4 for the price of 3, I'm on it. Phoenix 98, thumbs up. SRT Craze says, speaking of tunes, I heard that Green does some good tunes. Jay Green does really good tunes. I mean, I never hear me say a bad word about Jay Green. He's a great guy, does a lot of good things out there. And, when I say good things, I mean, he does a lot of really spends a lot of time with guys. He's a good guy, and he definitely has some good tunes. Speed Maniac, what be? I wish. He said, he's gonna say I love his 390. He says he loves his 392. Man, I love my 392. It's an awesome car. James B, what is my opinion of Venturo AZ850 tires? They're great. They're a lot of fun. They're inexpensive. Use them for what they're worth, which is really to make a bunch of tire smoke. Decent lateral acceleration, but in terms of straight line acceleration and braking, they're not the best, but you get what you pay for. And at that price, you can afford to go out and have fun with your car, which it makes even that much more endearing. I like the idea that I can go out and play and not have to pay as much to do so. It's a good thing they're cheap, because you will light them up and turn them into smoke pretty quickly. Blue Smoke 218 says, lots of good info. Thanks, man. Thanks for being a part of the show. Let's see. Jay checks in, says he was going to get the AZ850s, but he went with the Conti Extreme Contact DWS 06s. That's also another good tire. Himmy had asked, does Pikes do email, engine, and transmission tunes? If so, with what tuner? Diablo, HP, or what? I tell you what, if you've got HP Tuner software, he can definitely get you taken care of on a remote tune. But there's some requirements you would need to have, namely, preferably a wideband. But if it's an NA combination, shouldn't be too difficult. And again, if you've already got HP Tuner software and an unlocked PCM, you should be good to go. Give them a shout. They'll get you taken care of. Symphonics. So I'm looking for headers on his LS3. Can you explain the difference from 1 3/4 versus 1 7/8? So headers, it's yes and no. Yes, I can explain it, and no, I don't think we have enough time to get too deep into it. But 1 3/4 inch. Let's see. Getting back to it, 1 3/4 inch on an LS3 is a good size. Depending on the cam that you have and depending on the RPM range that you're looking to run that thing in. A stock car, you'll do fine with 1 3/4. Typically, fitment on 1 3/4 can be a little bit easier as well than the 1 7/8. Realistically, there's not that big of a difference between the two. I like 1 3/4 because they promote velocity down low without really giving up too much on the top end in terms of outright flow. A lot of times guys will get the impression that bigger is better when it comes to headers. That's not necessarily the case. Depending on the RPM that you're running the vehicle, what is your intended range of operating the vehicle? In other words, is it a street car that you're just playing around with on the street and not really taking to the drag strip too often? then the 1 3/4 will probably be better for you. But 1 7/8, you're not going to run into too many problems with those. I think the big issue that you have is, the idea, well, what if you want to step up later on? Just keep in mind, if you ever kept up with the, and I haven't really been keeping up with it, the old Engine Masters competition, a lot of those cars are running 1 3/4 inch headers that are making 600 horsepower. Main reason why is it does promote velocity and it does promote cylinder scavenging at lower RPMs. If you're going to run the vehicle or you're planning on, you're wanting to make the power higher in the RPM, typically that's where the 1 7/8 is going to help. But if you don't have the airflow to accommodate the 1 7/8, then you're not going to really lose anything at wide open throttle, but you may lose some at partial throttle. And that's really more to the point. Most guys get really wrapped up in wide open throttle numbers, but you forget that unless you're running the car wide open, all that flow doesn't really help you at all. You want to be able to evacuate the cylinder under partial throttle conditions as well. 1 3/4 probably be better for you in that respect. Let's see. Got some guys chatting about those Atura AZ850s in the winter. Oh yeah, ultra high performance all season. Those are, the Contis are good. AZ850, they're about the same no matter what. They're not awesome no matter what. Amber Moody chimes in. You know what, Amber? I have to say that this is probably one of the more poignant that we've had on the channel. And I want to thank you for this. It really speaks to the heart. It really speaks to the heart of what I try to accomplish here. And I'd like to respond to your comment that I understand that you like tacos. I, too, enjoy tacos. It's probably my favorite thing in the world sometimes, except for Mopars. Mopars and tacos, what more could you ask for? Jay Palma chimes in, like and thumbs up so the people see. Yeah, y'all like, thumbs up, man. Give me some love out there. Let's see. Unique Grooming chimes in with, it's got a 2018 Scat Pack, and I need to convince my wife the Hellcat is a better buy now that the wide bodies are out. Well, that shouldn't be too hard to do. See, first thing you need to do there is you need to explain to her that, the Hellcat wide body is going to be the latest iteration of the Hellcat. It's going to keep its resale value potentially, and it's a Hellcat, so it's fast, and she'll like it. She'll enjoy it. Racer X chimed in. By the way, that was Racer X's wife messing with me up there. Yeah, that's pretty funny. It's depending on your wife. See, it depends on how you really couch this. See, what you could do is you could start talking about Vipers, and you can say how great the Viper is, and start talking about wanting to buy a Viper. And, she's going to try to shoot that down all the way. And you go, well, you got these wide body Challengers. I mean, it's a Challenger. It's got some wide body kit. I don't know. It does have back seats. So technically it could be a family car. You could just tell her you're settling for that. You really want the Viper, but a wide body Hellcat. Okay, fine. And just play it off like that. You might be able to wear her down with that argument. Let's see. Toby Rama is chiming in with, it says, Dad used to drive an '08 Ram 5.7 4-speed auto, and the fuel consumption was awful. Yes, I bet it was. It was even worse when it was towing. The older 5.7s, especially with the 4-speed, I mean, they weren't the most fuel efficient vehicles out there, mainly because you had to really kind of lean on them to get those trucks rolling. It's actually kind of funny. Those trucks with the steeper gear actually sometimes got better fuel economy. Let's see, Racer X chiming in with, looking forward to running in January. I'm talking about my car's going to be hurting some feelings. Your car's going to be hurting some feelings. His car, I mean, it is a legitimate full weight mid 9-second Charger. That thing is a beast. So yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that. We do have the track rental coming up. Official date is January 12th at Houston Raceway Park. So definitely getting geared up for that. If you're interested in taking part, hit me up on my Instagram, BAMason721 at Gmail or at Instagram or wherever. You can always get me over there. We're going to limit it to about 20 cars. It's a private track rental, so, not going to, it won't be spectators, anything like that, just pit crew and folks wanting to come out and have a good time. Everybody's basically been shooting for personal best on this one. Let's see. Jay Palma. Yeah. Hey, we almost have as many people liking as are watching right now, which is good. Justin Baker says HP70 3200 RPM stall. Let's see. And horsepower limits of the Trans. Says he had his looks like he says neutralized on a 4.5 shift with a 410 gear on my turbo Ram. Acted weird since then, and on the 4.5 thinks I'm at the limit. Yeah. Hang on. I would say, yeah, you're nearing the limit of that transmission. One of the issues that I've seen with those transmissions is, right around 550 pound-feet of torque with the cars with stock gears. That's about where they'll start to slip. With the truck, with the heavier weight, I would imagine that there is, I don't know, probably a little bit lower torque number than that, just because of the weight that would have to carry. So probably around 5.25, 500, you start running into issues. Let's see. I mean, you could go with one of the Southern Hot Rod transmissions. I know that they do build them up quite a bit, but it will take some tuning to get that thing to shift the way that it should. See, Show Me Mopar asking, are my porting 392 intake manifolds for money? PayPal, you send it your way. I'm actually not doing any porting right now. I've just been so tied up with other things. I haven't been able to mess with it, but I may get back in doing that this spring. So stay tuned, and I will let you know once I start getting back into messing with porting manifolds. I just, like I say, just don't really have the time to mess with it. Been, it's like I say, just been running into some goofy stuff with work lately. So. Let's see. Jay Palma, been sub. Yes, I like it. Long time. Let's see. Toby Rama saying, I was thinking of going with the FI Tech Dual Quad EFI for a classic look with modern performance. My thoughts on that? I don't really like dual quad stuff. The fuel distribution isn't as great on a dual quad as it is with the single 4-barrel style. Just haven't seen a lot of guys have a lot of success with that in terms of outright performance. Not that it's a bad system. It does look cool, but I'd probably stick with the regular, 4-barrel style looking throttle body injection or throttle body spider style injection. Symphonic saying, okay, I think the 1 3/4-inch headers are for me. I believe it would be more low-end gains, more usable around town, just looking to run stock cam and full bolt-ons. Okay, yeah, in that respect, yeah, stick with the 1 3/4. The last thing you want to do is get yourself in a situation where you just have too much header, and it's, like I say, it won't hurt you in terms of horsepower, but it can hurt you in terms of partial throttle drivability. One of the things, too, to remember about long tubes is they don't necessarily add horsepower. A lot of guys will think, oh, well, if I have this long tube header, it'll add horsepower. There's so much more that goes into making a header than just calling it long tubes. A lot of it has more to do with packaging than anything else, but the length of the tube, not necessarily the shape, but the actual, well, in some cases, the shape depends on how it comes out of the flange, if it's too tight of a bend. But for the most part, just generally speaking, because of packaging issues, the header length is never really appropriate for the diameter that it's running. So the last thing you want is for a header to be, you get a 1 7/8 inch header. Well, that's great, but if it's too short, then it can really kill power down low. Just a lot of small things like that can really wreck an exhaust system for you. Let's see, SRT Craze. Hope I'm saying that right. I got it hopefully right at least 1 out of 2 times, batting a 500. Says, yeah, says he's seen a lot in resto mods with a 6.1 and they rock. They actually are awesome in resto mods, especially the lightweight A bodies. Like, yeah, that 6.1, and you got to remember the 6.1 in its environment is probably the most fun engines to drive. I mean, they're snappy, they're torquey, they're real strong. You get a real strong sense of old school muscle with that 6.1 in a way that you kind of I mean, you do get it with the 392. It's just, I don't know. I guess it's the knowledge of the fact that you've got the last of the true old school Hemis in that 6.1, I guess is really more to the point. But yeah, they're a lot of fun. Johnny Peters, I like it. See, Racer X says, hey, buddy, got to run. Good stuff as usual. Yeah, give me a shout tomorrow, man, for sure. Let's see. Justin Baker said, Pice did the current trans tune. He says, I thought it was at the breaking point also. It's crew cab, so unfortunately it's probably on its way out because I know me. Yeah, you'll keep adding power for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's at some point you just got to say, look, man, that trans is just going to give up the ghost at some point. But they will hang in there for a lot longer than a lot of folks give them credit for. And Alex will take really good care of that tune as well to try to keep it as alive for you as he possibly can while giving you the best performance as well. So let's see. SRT Craze. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. He's saying, I do great and have a lot of excellent info to share. I love the Mopar tech and please keep it rolling. I'm trying to, man. It's a lot of fun for me. I enjoy visiting with you guys. Let's see. Jeffrey Bender, the Enforcer, says he's got a set of M&H skinnies coming to go with a set of, looks like possibly race stars. Shed about 47 pounds of rotating weight. I think the calculation is, let's see, for the weight, which is 188 pounds of total weight off the car. My thoughts. Trying to keep up with that one. Plus, I got this light right in my face. It's hard for me to read anything. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to pick up. The main thing that I like about running the drag setup on these cars is that they, for me anyway, there's two things. One is safety. Second thing is consistency. I want to be able to have the confidence in knowing that the power that I'm making is going to be put to the ground in a way that is not going to freak me out somewhere around the 100-foot mark. You know, and a good solid drag tire setup, a solid launch. I mean, you'll definitely be picking up ET. It's hard to say. It's hard to say by how much. There's a lot that it depends on, but typically at least 1/10.5 to 2/10 right off the top with the same launch technique is about what you can expect. See, Jay Puma saying, I've heard people mention the Pursuit brakes as an upgrade. Are they even attainable? Yeah, you can get them, but I don't really see them being much of an upgrade in realistic terms. I mean, instead of what, Z23 pads or really anything aside from the stock pads will be an upgrade. I'm not really a big fan of swapping out anything other than the pads on those cars unless you do a full rotor and caliper swap. If you're not doing that, then it's really not going to get you a whole lot of a gain. Let's see. But as far as being attainable, yeah, I mean, if you've got a, I think you get them on Rock Auto, as a matter of fact. Don't quote me on that, but, or actually, you know what? You can get them from there or any Dodge dealership. If they've got them in stock, or they should be able to order them for you. And I'm not sure if there would be much of an upgrade, to be honest with you. Hayden, oh, hey, Chris, what up, man? He says, you watch, bro. Orange Crust is going to pick up in 10th with the new stock Hellcat air filter this Friday at HRP. I roll 3 ain't nothing to sneeze at. So what he's talking about is, and this is kind of going back on a conversation that we had. You know, I've always been a big advocate, and it goes back to when I was testing all of the intakes for the 392, and the stock filter for the 392 flows about 750 odd horsepower, and the stock Hellcat filter flows about 1100 CFM, if memory serves me correct, somewhere in that range when they're clean. And so in looking around, Chris was able to get info on the K&N filter, and the K&N filter is, you know, about 300 CFM shy of the stock Hellcat filter in terms of total flow. So it's just kind of interesting, you know, when you're looking at all these, you know, the cold air intake or whatever intake that you're looking at, it will pay dividends to look at what the stock system is actually designed to flow. And keep in mind that just because a filter fits in the box doesn't mean that it's absolutely right for your combination. The fact of the matter is that the manufacturers went through a lot of trouble to actually put a different filter together for the Hellcat. And like I say, it's got the flow data right there on the filter, so it's kind of hard to miss. It's just, it's weird with Mopars because it's so hard to improve upon what they have from the factory. And that's not to, that this isn't, the Emperor's new clothes type of a situation. This is a deal where the Mopar stuff is really that good from the factory that it is difficult to improve upon it. And that's what he's getting at. That Hellcat filter is actually an awesome filter. They're not cheap though, are they? At least if you get them from the dealership. Mark R's checking in, says he's going to be in the market for a used Hellcat. Says he's been throwing around the idea of a 6-speed manual. He says he knows the A8 is quicker, but just kind of missing banging the gears. I'll say this about the manual Hellcat. They are a lot of fun to drive. Just because one car is quicker doesn't mean that it's better. If rolling the gears on a car with 700 horsepower doesn't blow your hair back, I don't know what will. The cars are a lot of fun with the 6-speed. I wouldn't get it in your head that the A8 is better because it is quicker. I would say that if a manual transmission is what you're looking for and you want the feel, the old school feel of what you would have envisioned and would have hoped that a big block B body would run like with a manual transmission, get yourself a Hellcat, get it with the 6-speed manual, and you'll have a ball with it. Not to mention, it's less expensive than buying one with an automatic. So it's kind of a win-win in that respect. Triple Threat chiming in with hi. Hello. Jeffrey Bender, the Enforcer, Race Stars. Fat thumbed it. Yeah. They're good. Actually, they're just a riot to install, aren't they? Let's see. Toby Rama's checking in with saying he thought of building a Civic and changed from front drive to engine to rear engine, rear wheel drive to make people confused on the placement of the wider tires when I beat him. I say go for it. Symphonics, hey, thank you so much. I appreciate the contribution. I really do, from the bottom of my heart. I do thank you. He says, thanks for all the great info. Sorry, bombarding you with my Corvette questions. Hey, man, I'm love me some Corvette. I mean, the cool thing about Corvette is the fact that you've got a brand there that is so strong that realistically no other manufacturer can compete with it, whether it's because of price, whether it's because of performance, whether it's from just the ability to put something together that could do everything that brand of Corvette can do. You're not going to find that anywhere else. And it's the quintessential American sports car, honestly, in a way that the Viper never could. Corvette has endeared and entrenched all at the same time. Use those words for the correct connotation. But it is really, it's garnered the imagination of, just the whole American sports car experience where you can muscle with, the independent suspension, which back then it would have been the only car that had an independent rear suspension. But even from back in the day, such a great and strong brand. So, hit me up with Corvette stuff anytime. I love Corvettes. Justin Baker asks, 100% meth or meth water? This is for meth injection for a boosted application. He says he's got a kit but can't seem to decide on how I want to go with it. It's all hooked up but haven't decided to go for it yet. Have another tuner. Tell me 100% and lean out. It kind of depends on the system that you got. I prefer to see a system that is 100% meth running on injector duty cycle and just jet the thing appropriately to your power level. I don't really have anything against meth and water. It's just that some of the newer kits are capable of running 100% meth because the tubing and the pumps and everything can manage it. You can't go wrong with meth and distilled water, though. if it's mine, I want to go 100% meth just to take advantage of the octane. So I'd say 100% meth if you've got a kit that'll work well with it. And again, if you've got a controller that runs off injector pulse width, that's even better because you can ramp that system in to where you're not getting some huge hit down low and basically just fogging the engine with a bunch of meth when it really doesn't need it and can't use it. Because you got to keep in mind, a little bit with meth, a little goes a long way. You don't want to run like overkill with it. You want to use it for its intended purpose, but don't rely on the extra octane from the meth in the tuning. You just really want to, it's just a little bit. You want it to cool down the charge, and maybe add a little bit of octane to it as a safety measure, but don't take it too far. And that's why I like, again, the injector pulse width as opposed to boost reference, especially if you've got, if you're running a ton of boost, you just don't want to have it go straight to full hit. You want it to bring it in just like a progressive nitrous controller. Let's see. Oh, Jay's saying that he's talking about the pursuit brakes, said he's heard it's less of a job than switching to the slotted, etc. It kind of is, but realistically, a better set of brake pads will get you the same, actually probably better results and be a lot lighter on the pocketbook. See, Show Me Mopar says, B. Mason, got to take off. Thanks for being a part of the show. You can't save time, only spend it wisely. Thank you for your valuable time and info. Happy to. Thank you for being part of the show. Redline Red Cat is stunning. Thank you very much. Best color for the car, straight from the Satan's workshop. That's right. So, yeah, I'll tell you what. That is, my Hellcat is the exact car that I would have built had I, or could I have at the time when they were released. And that is what really drew me to that car, that Redline Red. And for those of you guys that don't know or aren't familiar with Redline Red, it's the darker shade of red, not maroon in sunlight, but it's a darker shade of red. And as the sun goes down, it'll actually change from kind of a bright red to a bit of like a deep, almost a dark maroon at night. It's actually pretty cool. You almost have two colors. I don't know how it does it, but it's cool as hell. And I love that about that car. That's probably one of my more favorite parts about that color. So, but yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. See, Phoenix 98, what brake pads for 16 SRT 392? The stock ones are dusting like crazy. I think it is the, oh crap. I'm having a brain fart here. It is the, somebody help me out with this. It's the EBC, I'll have to look it up. R something. I know I said it earlier. For some reason, I'm losing it here. I don't know. You could go EBC greens, but those aren't all the way greatest. What I would recommend pretty much anything that'll fit in the caliper other than stock, though. Yeah, the stock ones are awful. I'll have to do some research on that. I can't, for some reason, I'm just right now. It'll come to me in the middle of another sentence, though, I'm sure. Justin Baker, thank you very much. Says, thanks for the info. Keep up the good work. Enjoy the channel. Thank you so much. Appreciate you chiming in. Let's see. Jay Pump saying Phoenix 90. Oh, he was talking about, they're talking about the Pursuit brake swap. Yeah, like I say, you should be able to get it. They're not too hard to get. I mean, it's a service part and they sell those cars on the used market, so it shouldn't be that hard to get. Let's see. Johnny Holloman is asking, what's the difference between airflow of the Hellcat filter versus, and I think he's going with the 392/57 filter. The difference is about 300 CFM. The Hellcat filter will flow much better. And it's a factory part. Jeffrey Bender the Enforcer saying, thanks, Brian. Always good content. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. K. Jonesy saying it's got his RT parked in the garage with the hood up. Old school. Hell yeah. That's awesome, man. I appreciate the throwback. So all of my videos from back in the day were all me in the garage, hanging out in the garage with you guys with the hood of the 392 up. So yes, absolutely. Let's see. EP Plum Crazy Hellcat asks, what do I think about ID 1050 injectors and other 1000cc injectors? ID 1050s are great. I've never seen anybody have a problem with them. I like fuel injector connection injectors. That's what Alex likes, I should say. And again, FIC 1000s, ID 1050s, they're all good. FIC is what we've typically used for most of the higher horsepower builds. Can't say enough good things about them. They're very consistent. One thing I will say though, when it comes to buying fuel injectors, when you buy them, do not install them right out of the box. Let me rephrase this. I would highly suggest having them checked and flow balanced before they're installed, just to be on the safe side. Normally, they're going to be within 1 to 2% of each other, but I have seen fuel injectors come back that were not. And I've also seen stock Hellcat fuel injectors come back that were all over the board. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But always, it's usually $140 to $170 to have them flow checked and balanced. If you're spending that much money on your car, believe me, you're not just putting injectors on it. You're doing a lot of other things. Again, it's buyer beware. Don't just take for granted that something is the way that it should be. Checks and balances are there for a reason. We always sent, by the way, brand new injectors to get flow checked and balanced. That's just proper good practices. And that does two things. One, you're ensured that the injectors are the right injectors and somebody didn't accidentally throw a 600cc injector in there when it was supposed to be a 1200. And the other thing is that it makes the car easier to tune when everything is flow balanced the way that they should be. So again, food for thought. Jay Poma, thank you so very much. I appreciate the contribution. It says Operation Revlon and Project Revlon. Yes. So far the money is being put to good use. The drive shaft has been ordered. I've ordered a Wiles drive shaft for Project Revlon. And that is going to do a couple of things for me. The first thing, peace of mind, that there's, even though at the power level that the car is stock, would it tear up the stock drive shaft? Well, yeah, I've heard it happening, as a matter of fact. And I don't want to be one of those guys looking for somebody's stock exhaust because my drive shaft decided to get all, brush hog underneath there. But yes, today, as a matter of fact, the drive shaft was ordered. I'm looking forward to getting that in probably sometime week. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll be looking at a brand new Wiles drive shaft underneath Revlon. So, yep, she's already getting a little bit of love. And to me, it really is a peace of mind thing. I want to be able to enjoy the car. I want to be able to launch that car hard. Going after a record with a stock Hellcat is fun, but, I don't really consider a drive shaft, a mod, so to speak, in terms of power. It's not going to pick up any ET or any mile an hour because of that drive shaft. I'm only doing it specifically for durability. I would hate to get out there and rip off, a 152 60 foot only to have that thing turn itself into a pretzel, right afterwards. So, again, that's what we're going for with that. So, but thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Justin Baker saying no filter turbo guard. Yeah, all the way. Run the mesh. Run the mesh. You're saying FIC Hemi 127 pounds, the best way to go. Yeah. I'll tell you what, that the FIC 127s, which are 127 pound per hour injector, which are 1300 cc, one of the absolute best fuel injectors on the market, especially for E85 use. I mean, you just cannot go wrong with those injectors. Justin Baker says, Hellcat injectors suck, so buy 16 and match the best of all 8. Yeah, good luck with that. You need to buy about 48 of them to get the best out of 8. We actually had a set. Actually, there were Racer X's stock fuel injectors. Two things about that. Number one, stock fuel injectors, you can't really rebuild them, and you can't really take them apart to clean them the way you can with the Bosch style injectors. So there's that problem. But those injectors were all over the board. I mean, it was to the point where the guy that was taking a look at them, Fuel One here in Houston, Keith over at Fuel One. Check him out, by the way. If you need fuel injectors taken care of, I don't have his number off the top of my head, but you might be able to just Google Keith over at Fuel One in Houston. Absolute best when it comes to taking care of fuel injectors. But anyway, he was looking at him and he goes, yeah, I can't do anything with these injectors. I'm not even going to charge you. Just take them, get them out of my face. Yes, sir. J Poma, 5'7" RT driver here. Awesome. What else needs to be changed when upgrading the calipers and pads? Congrats on the drive shaft. Thank you very much. Really not much. You can go with a set of braided lines. Just make sure that they're bled properly. I would recommend a pressure bleeder at that point. But in terms of upgrading the calipers and pads, really not a whole lot. I mean, again, it depends on what you're planning on doing with the car. But I think Demon Rotors, not Demon the car, but Demon the manufacturer, makes a really nice set of rotors that you might look into as a possible upgrade. But realistically, you know, the brakes are actually already pretty good. I would just take a look at pads more than anything else. If you're really looking to, you know, up the stopping power of that vehicle, then, you know, that would really be the best place to start, at least in my experience. I don't have a ton of experience really working with the different brake systems with the cars, mainly because most of the guys typically stick with the stock stuff because it works really well. But, you know, that being said, you can always improve upon that. And like I say, pads are definitely the best way to go with that. Plus, they dust up like crazy. I got to do something with mine because it's driving me nuts. And I've got flat black wheels and they're still a different color. It's driving me nuts. Hold on. EP Plum Crazy saying, okay, I like that. LSX Jimmy, pulley swap or get the fuck out. Man, pulley swap. We got to do pulley swap, pumps, injectors, long tube headers. Don't want any part of that. Jay saying drive shaft mod is called an intelligent mod. Yeah, I'll tell you, any modification that aids in durability is a good thing. Tubby Rom is saying I skipped over his last comment. What are you talking about? Which one? Where are you at? Let me find you. Oh, I didn't even see you in here. The only vet you would highly consider is a 63 Stingray split window. However, I'd love to drive a C7 Z06. I tell you what. Oh, earthquake. Let me tell you something about the older vets. They are gorgeous to look at. They are a piece of art. But the older cars, I will argue, are much more satisfying to look at. They're much more satisfying to want than they really are to own or drive. I've driven quite a few of C2 vets, Corvettes. I've driven quite a few C3s, C4s. There's nothing like just a well-built C2 or C3. They just have such a unique driving style, but you cannot compare them to a modern vehicle. In fact, be doing yourself a disservice if you did, because it comes from a completely different era. They are a bit of a handful in some respects, but they are woefully underpowered, and that chassis is so flexy that they really, to be honest with you, they can't handle the power that they were given initially in '66 when the 396 was first put into those cars. That chassis flexed quite a bit, even leading into the 1968 model year, where they started doing more and more chassis stiffening just to keep the car from, you know, turning itself into a screw with you know, stick your tires. It's something the guys figured out pretty quick with those cars. So definitely a lot more fun to want than they are to own. See, LSX Jimmy saying the Whip Cat is going to be up for sale since a brand new 18 Raptor got added to the stable today. You gotta be kidding me. I got all the fuel system you need. Yeah, you do. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that the new Raptor has made it to the stable. I need to see if there's some parts I can pilfer off of that car. But anyway, congrats on the new Raptor. That's a badass truck. Let's see. Whipple Cat. Can't believe that car is going away. Justin Baker is saying, if you like, let people know that through January 1st, get 10% off using coupon code Dr. Diff at, let's see, elitegear.net. That's dealer pricing. Well, you guys saw it right here. Check that out. 10% off using Dr. Diff coupon code. I like it. So, let's see. Oh, yeah, talking about, so getting back to my Hellcat, you know, the drive shaft mod for me, it's, you know, I really do consider it mandatory. I think if you're going to own a Hellcat, if you're going to take that car to the drag strip, if you're going to be wailing on that thing at all with hard launches, you know, with the pedal hop, which is another real thing for suspension cars, I think it really would do you some good to look into one yourself if you've got a Hellcat. The 392 cars, you're not going to run into as much of an issue there. I mean, there's not as much power, it's not as much torque. And even when they do hook hard, one thing you got to remember is that the 392 cars do weigh less by a couple 100 pounds. And the other thing is that they're geared more aggressively. That more aggressive gear takes some of the load off of the drive shaft, off of the transmission, and transmits that to the rear end itself. So, you know, another reason, what is on my mouth? Fuck's sake. But that's another reason, you know, just to consider the idea that you're just not loading everything up as much with that 392. Whipple Hellcat. Yeah, Justin, looks like you got one up for sale. Toby Ron, what are you talking about? I skipped over you again. Where are you at? I just talked about the vet. I don't see the other one. Well, repost it. I don't see you in here. Let's see. Yeah, I just talked about the split window. Hemi Head saying, taking my 18 Scat to a test tune fun run evening at local drag strip soon. Any tips for a newbie? Want to get some consistent baseline before doing any more car mods? So a couple of tips. First of all, make sure that you're on a sticky tire. I can't emphasize that enough. If you're taking it out there on a stock tire, it will do you absolutely no good. You won't get any solid data, and it will be far too frustrating to launch that car. Now then, that being said, launch technique. What I like to do with the 392 cars, and the Hellcat for that matter, is you're going to stall it up to about 1200 RPM. Now, I don't want you to get too wrapped up in the actual RPM itself, just enough to load up the torque converter. And that's somewhere around 1200-ish RPM. When you go to launch the car, after you've done your burnout, well, first of all, let's start with the burnout. Make sure you're out of the water when you start your burnout. Just use the water to get the tires wet, lube them up a little bit, get about 6 feet out of the water, then do your burnout. Never do your burnout right in the water. You're going to scatter water all up into the fender well. It's going to be dripping all over everything, makes a big mess, and you can drip water onto your tires as you're sitting there at the tree. So do the right burnout, right procedure with the burnout. Stall the car up to, like I say, around 1200-ish RPM, and your cadence with the throttle is going to be about fast. You're not just going to stand on the throttle. You want to roll into the throttle quickly, but you want it to be measured. Some guys will actually kind of stutter it a little bit out of the hole. I don't really do that so much. I'll actually kind of just roll into it a little bit. The reason for a little bit of a stutter is to load up the torque converter. It's a real quick, if you're watching it in slow motion, it would be right here and then standing on it on the throttle. It just kind of looks like that in real terms. But just basically a walking pace, like heel toe. That's kind of your cadence. It's yellow, yellow, yellow. See the last yellow? It's roll. It's just roll into the throttle, not map the throttle. And the idea is that you're trying not to shock the try not to shock the tires to get them. You don't want them to break loose. And you also don't want to flash the converter. And that's part of the reason why you're loading it up just a little bit so you don't flash the converter. That flashing the converter is what can be a bit of a pain in the ass. And he had said, oh no, he's on Tri 5Rs. That's actually, well, same kind of idea, just, roll into the throttle the same way. You're gonna want to modulate a little bit. The Tri 5Rs do like a little bit of heat in them though. So I'd say about at least a 4 to 5 second solid burnout. Let's see. We'll get you where you need to be. But again, just make sure you're out of the water. And also too, make sure you're backing into the water. Don't drag the water up with your front tires. That'll just, that can actually, what'll happen is especially if you're running on stock front tires, the reason why you want to back in is because you don't want a situation where you roll up, your front tires are still wet, you do your burnout, and then you keep doing a burnout, or basically you come out of the burnout and you're rolling over water after that, because stock tires will drag water with them. Let's see. Justin says, I was saying put a Whipple on yours. Oh, on mine. Won't that 2.9 wake it up even more? My car's not getting a Whipple, man. There is no way. If I did, it'd be a 4.5, but no. No Whipple for mine. Toby Rama asks, how would I go about making a fake drum brake to put over a disc to make a drum brake car seem stock? I wouldn't. I'd be showing off the fact that it had the disc brakes. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't even consider that. Unless, the only way you could do it is put a full face cover over the wheel so they can't see anything. Justin Baker's checking out. He says, checking out this evening. Thank you for all the great info. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. Let's see. Jay Pump comes in. I wasn't sure if the rest RT. The COP RT system, I guess. Let me read the rest of this thing here. Like the booster, master, et cetera, we're good to go with an upgrade to Brembo. But yeah, no, they're fine. Any of the stock master cylinders are fine with that setup. They're a little bit touchy, but you kind of expect that when you're going to an upgraded brake system anyway. So, I would say, I wouldn't worry too much about it. If there's a kit or a setup that you're looking for, I say go for it. Just make sure you do the entire system. Don't just do the fronts. Also do the rears, because you don't want to mess with the balance of that brake system. So especially if you're going, like you say, with Brembo, Willwood, or Bear, those will typically come with, significantly more aggressive pads. They're, more aggressive, larger pistons in the calipers themselves. So yeah, you want to make sure you will system, and realistically with modern ABS will typically be able to with it. If you were doing this in a car without ABS, then definitely proportioning valves would be a part of your purchase and part of that install. But no, you're good to go. In fact, most of those aftermarket kits aren't really that far from stock, especially if you've got like PBR calipers from the factory, which are actually pretty decent. Just one thing to consider is making sure that, again, not only are you getting the full system, but you're also getting braided lines and all the other accessories, so to speak, all the other outline parts to go with that system. I wouldn't use stock lines or anything. I mean, you can use the hard lines, but just, make sure you're going with the upgraded parts to make it all work together well. And Hemi Head's saying he's got to go too. Thanks again. Oh, wait, here we go for the info. All right. Well, thank you very much. Let's see. Jay Palm says, that's a relief. I thought an overhaul was needed with my luck. No, not really. All you got to do is, remember a full system approach is the best approach. And, I get it. This stuff is expensive. So, if it's not in the budget, like I always say, man, no sin in saving. But make sure you do a full system when you do the brake upgrades. If not, then you can get into a mismatch system, and that'll that will make driving that car not so much fun. Toby Rama checks in. So are we, Blues Brothers? Cop brakes, cop motor, cop springs. Hey, that was a 440. What was that thing? 440 Fury, actually. 4-door. Sweet car. Front and back, same time for sure. Absolutely. Don't forget your .4 brake fluid, and make sure that everything is flushed very well before anything goes on that car. And again, pressure bleed from your right rear, left rear, right front, left front. That's your the way you're going to be pressure bleeding that system. Let's see. I hope I'm saying this right. Mohi Yadiv. That's a cool sounding name too. I got some cool sounding names on this channel, man. I got such a boring Brian Mason, 2 first name guy. That's a cool sounding name. Hi, where am I from? H-Town, baby. Houston, Texas. Symphonics. I'm not sure if you watched the 10th channel from Tunnel Chase, or 10th channel from Tunnel Chaser, but he just traded. Oh yeah, he traded his Demon for a GT350R. What's my opinion of that? I'll tell you what. It's his bread, man. He can butter it however he wants. If a GT350R was calling his name, and he was able to get a little scratch out of that in the process, then more power to him. I get it. Demon. It is, some people will say it's a bit of a one-trick pony. My argument is it's a pony that does one trick very well and does some other things fairly well. Obviously a red eye might have changed some minds a little bit with that, but just because of the suspension settings and all that, being a little bit stiffer, actually significantly stiffer than the Demon. But you know what? I'm happy for him, man. If the GT350R is what he wanted, and he got one. It's a gorgeous car too with those stripes, man. I don't see any problem, rocking that look ever. I mean, there is a definite thing to be said about a car that's as well balanced as a GT350R. I mean, it's the yin to the yang of the Demon. I mean, that GT350R does a little bit of everything really well, and the Demon does one thing exceptionally well. So, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Might not have been what I'd have done, but you know what? I'm not in his shoes, so I can't speak to it. But I kept the Demon. Let's see. Mate Yadiv asked Justin Bieber or somebody Mendez. I don't know. Like in a fight? I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know who Shawn Mendes is. I don't really keep up with Mr. Bieber himself, but I don't know, man. I gotta stick with you know what? I would probably say Mendez would probably take him in a fight. I don't know though. Justin Bieber might have some skill sets that I'm not aware of. Jay Palmer says, good to know. Trick of the trade. Hey, my mom's maiden name is Mason. Awesome. Dude, we're family already. I like it. Symphonic says, just that they're 2 completely different cars, Oh, absolutely. Well, the beauty of that is this. I mean, if, in a world where, funds are unlimited, you'd want one of each, right? I mean, I would love nothing more than to have a GT350R for a closed circuit track day, large open track event car. I mean, it would be, something that would be durable. It would be something that you wouldn't really have to worry about too much in terms of being overpowering or whatever. The car is such a well-balanced setup. You can't really take anything away from it. It's awesome. And it gives you such a completely different driving experience than literally on 2 completely different bookends over here. I completely get it. And the fact that, if you're able to get that car at a solid deal, one of the good things about that car is that it's never going to lose value. And that's kind of more to the point in one respect. I mean, you've got a situation with the GT350R is a lot like the Raptors. They just never lose value. we don't really know where the Demon's going to fall in place, but you know, I would assume it would hold value fairly well, considering it's a Demon. But realistically, I can't say anything bad ever about a GT350s. I will say to this day, it's one of my favorite cars that I've ever driven. Jay Palmer says, yeah, at least he's buying American. Exactly. I'm stoked that he's buying American. Jochen Hayden, the Mopar Messiah. Thanks. I appreciate that. It's kind words. Let's see. Toby Rama asking, what do I think of the 16 GT being an EcoBoost V6 instead of NA or supercharged V8? 16 GT. Well, the GT is the V8. So 16 GT being an EcoBoost V6 instead of the NA V8 or supercharged V8. Well, look, on one hand, I'm surprised that the 16 didn't get, you know, the tradition that falls in line there. But Ford's got a very rich tradition of running small displacement forced induction engines, at least in terms of 4 cylinders. I would have actually liked to have seen them gone the way of the 3.5, but I'm glad that they didn't. You know, it's weird to me that they didn't go that route. It almost seemed like they were edging towards that, but, you know, cooler heads prevailed when we kept the 5.0, which is a better engine overall in general. Let's see. Phoenix 98 asks, what do I think about Dodge ending 392 and going supercharged 5.7 in the future? To answer that question, I will have to say that I am shocked that they didn't do it instead of the 392. When the 392 was released, well, let me rephrase that. For the 2015 model year, the reason why I say that is because of the drag pack cars. You have the supercharged 5.7, which is the bad boy of the drag pack cars, and then the NA 426. I'm still surprised that they didn't bring some of the, you know, downstream a little bit. And what I mean by that is they didn't even touch any of it. There's no supercharged 5.7 and there is no 426, yet you have the drag pack cars there. So on one hand, I'm surprised, but we cut out of the deal. So in a way, we kind of got that. But as far as taking the place of the 392, man, I'd be all over that. Could you imagine freaking 2.7 supercharger on that 5.7? That thing would be sick. You'd be looking at about a 600 engine that you could do everything you do to a it'd be like Hellcat Light, and it'd be a lot of fun. It would sound amazing too. Maybe they'll put a maybe they'll put a decent exhaust on that thing. I got decent and different exhaust kind of scattered there. It's a 16. Who cares? They didn't make a GT in 16 with a V8. Yeah, they did. It's just a part of a conversation that goes back on that car was, I was surprised that the EcoBoost wasn't, in this case, the V6 wasn't part of the engine lineup for that engine, for that car, considering it was going to be a world platform at that point. Let's see. Oh, I lost my place here. Oh God, I'm going to butcher this one, guys. Hochin Hayden, I like that. Sounds cool. Have I been hearing much with all the controversy on the 2018-19 GT50 and piston slap and cylinder wall scoring? I've been keeping up with it a little bit, but I'm convinced that this is just a bad run of those engines, a limited issue. I don't think it's going to really be something that's going to be a long-term deal for those cars. But I also know that there's some guys that are experiencing that problem intermittently. So I'm not exactly sure what all is causing that problem. And I don't really know why that car would have those problems, because so much of that engine really isn't all that different. It's a slightly larger bore. I wouldn't think, oh, damn, fucking mosquito. I would think that would be causing too many issues, but it might be. I mean, it's the same piston as the GT350, or at least the same bore size. I wouldn't think that'd be. Apparently, it is, and I'm hating that too because I'm used to bragging about Fords being bomb proof, and here it is. They're running into problems just like the rest of us. See, Symphonics. If I were ever to buy a foreign car, am I going BMW, Ferrari, McLaren, Audi, Lambo? It depends on what I'm buying. I mean, if you're looking at, like a sedan or something like that, I'd probably go BMW with the sedan. Although I do have a soft spot in my heart for Mercedes. So I don't know. E63 is pretty badass too. If I'm going sports car and money is no object, damn. Here lately, before I would say Ferrari, but here lately, Lamborghini's got some really nice, fairly durable cars out there. So I'd probably have to go Lambo for that. Oh, the GT supercar. Toby Ram is saying he's talking about the GT supercar having the 3.5 EcoBoost as opposed to a V8. Man, I got to say something about that. It's why. So they couldn't have done a twin turbo Coyote engine. I know trying to, really drive that brand of EcoBoost and all they can do, but there's too many guys that have had too many problems with Eco years. In fact, you ask any Ford tech what engine they buy, if they're buying a new truck or a used truck, they're going to say the 5.0. I don't know. To me, it's a great exercise in terms of engineering, but for practicality and really drive home a supercar, just to call it a supercar. And I know it did well at Le Mans and all that, but look, man, it's a limited production engineering exercise. Basically, to me, it looks like a bunch of beta testing wrapped up in a cute package. So I would have loved to see that car with a V8 twin turbo. Maybe it would have given us some insight to some other Mustang that they might release. What's it called? A GT. It's got a number like a 500 or something. Anyway, I haven't even heard that name in so long, I almost forgot it. So that would have been cool if we'd had some kind of insight there. I don't know. Maybe the GT 500 will have a 3.5 EcoBoost too, and we'll just have EcoBoost the world going on here. Jay Palma, Audi, duh. I tell you what, there's Audis are no joke. I don't see anything ever wrong with an Audi. They are as durable as an anvil but don't really give the same driving feel as the BMW or the Mercedes, only in that you don't feel like you can have the same kind of fun with an Audi just because it's so clinical. I mean, it's like going to a doctor with absolutely no sense of humor whatsoever. That's the Audi. Extremely German in that respect. And Porsche, dude, I love Porsches. I cannot get enough of Porsche. Porsche would be like the default, but if I'm going like supercar, I want to go something that's just gaudy as hell. I want to roll out there with, I want to let my skullet grow out and get me a nice medallion and, go that route. Porsche, I don't know. I don't have enough class to drive a Porsche, I guess, or at least to own one. To you chiming in, brother, you're doing God's work answering these questions. We appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you guys too very much. Jay Palma, Benz, yeah. Well, I had a 2009 E63 with the M156, and I loved that car. In fact, our LX platform is based on the W211 and W212 geometry, that platform. In fact, if you take a Charger and strip it down, take all the body panels off of it, strip it down to just the basic shell, it is indistinguishable from that 2009 E63 W211. I mean, it literally, you cannot tell the difference. In fact, where the fuel pump is located, where everything is located inside that car is identical. It's kind of creepy, actually. Let's see. Nathan Chaos asking, Can raising my RPMs on my 6.1 to 7,000 RPM harm my engine? It can harm your engine. Rotating assembly on that car is good to about 6,700 RPM as a max. I wouldn't take it any farther than that, but you will absolutely have to get valve springs. You're going to need to get a cam. You're going to need to get a lot of stuff to be able to spin that thing 7,000 RPM reliably. I'd also get stanky tie bars and collars to go along with that. Braxton Wright asked, if I get a good cam and tune and whatever else your builder recommends, no, it won't hurt your 6.1. Do everything that builder recommends and do not cut any corners at all. Let's see. Is it Jochin or Hoke? Man, tell me how to pronounce this name because it's cool as hell looking and I don't know how to say it. Asked, what are the pros and cons of doing a 426/440 stroker build on the 392 Hemi? Is it worth the time and effort or no? Oh, man. Good question. Long answer. In short, pros and cons. Pros, you pick up torque down low, little bit of horsepower, maybe. The cons is finding the right intake manifold that will work with that level of displacement. The stock 6.1 style intake, which would incorporate the Edelbrock intake as well. They just, I don't know, they don't work as well as the 6.4 intakes. There's a little bit of debate on that, but it depends on what system what engine you're starting off with. When we're talking about doing a stroker kit, are you starting off with an engine that you want to make just outright horsepower, or are you talking about an engine that you just want to have fun with? Longevity can be a bit of an issue with the 440 just because of rod to stroke ratio. If I'm going to do a stroker, I'm probably going to go 426 just because I would probably want to keep the thing around for a while. But, you go with 426, don't go over the top with the camshaft, keep the stock intake manifold, but put an 84 millimeter throttle body on it, and you'll pick up quite a bit of torque down low, a little bit of horsepower up top, let's say 50 to 60 horsepower up top, which sounds like a lot, but you're bumping up, displacement quite a bit in the process. And, as far as cons, it's a lot of money to do a stroker when that money could have just as easily been put towards a Hellcat, and that Hellcat will kick the crap out of that 426. So unless you're going to spray the piss out of the 426 and then you're building a race car, and at that point you pick the wrong platform. Symphonics saying, speaking of the GT500, I still see all these Mustang guys claiming Venom kills demons. Yeah, you'll never stop hearing that. I hope they realize for a Mustang to beat a demon is going to need like 900 plus horsepower, and we all know that ain't happening. Man, look, there are a lot of mid 9-second Mustangs floating around out there, and don't take them lightly. But I will say this, it does take a significant amount of work to get that car where it needs to be. The problem is that most of those guys don't do the requisite suspension mods to get those cars to that point. You really do have to build a Mustang from the back to the front and then from the ground up. The thing is, the Demon, all you got to do is put a good tire on the back of it and you're good to go. You can take that thing out, beat that thing senseless, and you're probably not ever going to have any problems with it to speak of. The Mustang, a little bit different story. And for every 9-second pass you see on YouTube, there's probably 10 where that car has, well, or at least a car like it, I should say, has blown up. So, I try not to get too wrapped up in the whole, well, if I mod my Mustang for X number of dollars, I can beat a demon argument. The reason why I don't really get into that is because quarter mile times and ETs and all that other stuff and trying to snipe after a specific car, it doesn't really, I don't know. It's just not an argument that is really worth having for me, mainly because, you get a Z06, put a turbo 400 in it, hit it with, I don't know, all the boost and all the nitrous and go run, low 8s, high 7s. What about that guy? He doesn't want any part of this conversation. The thing is, there's always going to be somebody faster. It's not cubic inches that wins the race. It's cubic dollars that wins the race. And, you know, if you've got a $30,000 car with $30,000 worth of mods, you've got yourself a $30,000 car, period. If you've got, you know, an $80,000 car with no mods, you got an $80,000 car. See where I'm going with that? So, you know, I try again. Yeah, I not that one's better than the other, not that one is, you know, that somebody is smarter about going about how they're making this, you know, time slip show up in their hands. But if we're talking about, well, I only spent, you know, $60,000 total for a 9-second time slip. Let me tell you guys something. There's a lot of dudes that are laughing at that. And they're saying, dude, for that kind of money, I could have built my car and one for my buddy and one for my cousin that all run 9-second quarter miles. And chances are they're all Chevrolets, and chances are they're all Malibus. So just keep that in the back of your mind. When these guys start talking about Mustang killed or Venom kills Demon, that's such a who even comes up with that crap? Venom kills the demon. There's not, that doesn't even go together. Venom kills a demon? What? That's stupid. Like, I don't know. There's something that could have been a lot more creative. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off subject. Google says, cool story. Tell again. I've told a lot of stories, so we gotta be a little bit more specific. Toby Ramos talking about the Bentley Continental Super Sports all the way, power and class. You know, the problem with the Bentley is that they were immediately dated when they were released. I love the Conti, but I don't know. You see them now, and it was just kind of, I don't know. I like the Continentals, but I don't know. I wouldn't go that route myself. Plus, you got to deal with British reliability. Let's see. Braxton saying he was responding to Nathan, but thanks for the answer. Yeah, Cesar, I'll be answering every question I get. Let's see. As best I can, anyway. Justin Baker, rotating assembly, max RPM on his 5.7, decent cam and great valve train. I know you disagree, but the 1219s work great. I know they work well. I'm just so used to seeing 1516s in them that I sometimes lose a little sight of the other ones. Put them in several bills, although I want one of my turbo cams. Yeah, actually, max RPM on the 5.7, I just don't want to see it go past about 67, 6,800 RPM. I just don't really trust torsional rigidity of that block much past that. I know there's plenty of guys that are turning them to 72, 7,400 RPM. And that's great if you're building an all-out race car, but for the street, especially, I mean, you know, fuel quality withstanding. I mean, we are talking about something that's not necessarily running on Excite all the time. You know, Excite E85, which is a very, very consistent fuel. I don't know. I like to err on the side of caution when it comes to the Hemis. Realistically, okay, 7,000 RPM is where I would leave it. Joaquin says, "Yikes, you just killed my dreams." Come on, man. Let's see. It says, oh, wait. Sorry, I blew right past some stuff. Hang on a second, guys. Sorry. Time out. Here we go. Sorry, here we go. It says, Yikes, it's killed through. So he's talking about the stroker setup. I mean, I say go for it. I wouldn't let it kill your dreams. I'm just saying there are limits to where you can go. And honestly, the limits for the stroker, again, it's just the intake manifold that you're going to be working with. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you can get the thing on a dyno jet. You could probably make 540, 550 to the wheels, but I just wouldn't count on it, you know. But that's just from what I've seen. Doesn't mean that it's a tried and true thing. Braxton Wright asking, if I want to push 400 horsepower on a 6.1, what would you do? You're talking about 400 horsepower to the wheels. You know, manifold, 84 millimeter throttle body. I would say obviously a camshaft, and that'll put you right where you need to be. Actually, that'll put you over where you would want to be. And Justin Baker asked, let's see, and how much do you think the stock bottom end will hold on the 5.7? then what about with forced pistons rods also? Actually, the 5.7 hold a lot of power. I wouldn't really trust it much past, say, 650 on a Mustang dyno to the wheels. But you do pistons and rods. You can stretch that out a little bit. Depending on what pistons and rods you go with is kind of where I'm going with that. So make sure you spend your money wisely there. Molnar all the way. But I would say you would be, shit, let me think about this. The last big horsepower 5.7 that I saw was in a Durango, and I want to say it put down, this is in a Durango, by the way, but it wasn't two-wheel drive mode. I think it was like 580, 590, I think, to the rear wheels. That one ended up blowing up too, so I don't know if that's going to do you much good. Let's see. Hang on just a second. Okay. Is it Posner 2? Is that what it is? Ask, what are my thoughts on the Hellraiser decoupling pulley for the Hellcat? It's made by Linton's. Oh, same company that makes the stock Hellcat supercharger. I heard a lot of good things about it. Haven't seen one installed yet, but I heard a lot of good things about it. In fact, Chris, who was just on a minute ago, and I were talking about that today. It is they use the stock supercharger clutch assembly and press on the 272 upper pulley onto that unit. Works just like a stock unit. Can't see anything wrong with it. I like that it is a clutched unit. I like that a lot, considering how much it takes to drive the superchargers on the Hellcats. I like that there is a buffer there to help quell some of the basically the shock, the backlash when you lift the throttle. And with the amount of time that it does take, I mean, the bypass does crack open really quickly, but still, any help there is good to keep shock from going through the drivetrain and through the engine as well. Let's see. Joaquin Hochin, God, you got to tell me how to say. Okay, here he goes. He's telling me. Hang on. Says, thanks for asking my question. I need to look elsewhere for gains. By the way, the J in German is like an English Y. So Jochen. Hey, I like that. Okay, Jochenheiden. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, as far as you can, like I say, don't get me wrong. It depends on what you're going for. And what Jochen was asking earlier was, what are the pros and cons of a stroker setup on a 392? I don't like to oversell anything, but the reality is, you go stroker, it's going to have a lot harder hit down low. It's going to feel a lot stronger than what it does now. It's more of a question of how much stronger is it going to be compared to what you have now versus what is out there based on the prices that you're going to be spending. If money's not an object and this is exactly what you want to do because you want that cubic inch displacement, then the right combination is stroker kit, cam, ported intake manifold, true ported throttle body. And again, I mean, you're looking at gains of, 70 horsepower and about 70 pound-feet of torque. So that tells you anything. Toby Ramos says, what Venom, what STFU, and come out with it already, Ford. Yeah, listen, there's a lot of guys that are saying that, and not just, diehard Ford fans. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are interested in the car in general and want to see that thing hit the streets. I mean, they've been talking about it for forever. There seems to be, I don't know what the deal is, but they just want to bring it out. But that's the car that we can't we can't get enough of talking about, and that we can't seem to ever get a release date on. Let's see. SRT Craze was saying there was a guy on Facebook selling Hellcat superchargers and saying they can be installed on 5.7, 6.1, and 6.4s with an adapter plate, which Modern Muscle Extreme has. Have you heard of that before? I have heard of it before, but I haven't seen it before. I'm sure there's a way to make it work, but I mean, there's a lot of easier pre-built kits that are out there that will make it work and will probably do a little bit better job at a little bit less money, and namely the Whipple setup is what I'm thinking of there. So, you know, if there's a price, if there's a reason to do it in terms of price, it might be worth it. But realistically, I don't know that I would go out of my way to buy a Hellcat supercharger. I don't know where that Hellcat supercharger came from. I don't know if it's a used unit, if it's a new unit, if he's just going out and buying, you know, there for a while, there were some Hellcats that had bad snout bearings. Who knows if you're going to get one of those? I don't know. But the Whipple setup is a proven performer, and I'm not saying it's better than a Hellcat blower for those applications, but it's certainly certainly a bit more enticing. Anyway, to me, it would be. Phoenix 98, how fast equals how much money? Yeah, no kidding. Not only to get there, but to bring it back if something goes wrong. Jay Palmer says, I heard the head of Mopar SRT say the Red Eye is a Hellcat that was possessed by a demon. I tell you what, the Red turned out to be a pretty stout car all the way around. I like the slightly larger supercharger. It is a little bit more efficient down low than the IHI/Lysholm setup that the Hellcat. You know, it's just to me the Red Eye is really more of a it's kind of a just a newer. I'm not going to say a newer edition, kind of from where the Hellcat started. I like the Red Eye a lot, and I like that you can option it with the 309 gear. I think that's actually a really cool thing that they did there. Now all they need to do is come up with a 331 rear gear set for my brothers with the 392s, and we'll be in good shape. SRT Crazy says, LOL, you're so right. That Venom Kills Demon trash talk is so damn juvenile that it had to be created by a teenager. Like, I tell you something. I don't get it. It's stupid sounding. It doesn't have any basis in anything. If you're gonna talk shit, you gotta have a basis in truth, and the basis in truth is what makes it funny. And I don't know. It just, you know, it sounds like a bad motivational poster, like a demotivational poster. You know, Venom kills demons. It's almost just like the beginning of like rock, paper, scissors. Venom kills demon. What is demon kill bow tie? Bow tie kills Venom something? I don't know. Anyway. Toby Ramasinju asks, so how much power can a 5.9 Magnum hold? Not much. Those blocks are not anything that I would hang my hat on. Maybe, you know, 500 horsepower at the flywheel before things get really creepy. Let's see. Justin Baker saying he feels like he's over 580 now. I bet that truck is. So hope close to 600. I mean, it made 506 on a 100 shot of nitrous. I'd at least hope. Well, yeah, I mean, you're definitely there. I would say, you know, just with that trans, man, you're probably sneaking up on borrowed time, brother. I hate to tell you, but yeah, there's only so much that bad boy can handle, especially with the weight of the trucks. Now, that being said, you know, if you're running around on a street type tire that's just basically going to go up in smoke and it's a lot of fun, then really you don't have to worry too much about it because your tires are kind of acting as your fusible link. So at least there's that to put that thing on a slick and get it on a drag strip, and it might be a different story. So let's see. Oh, hang on a second. Bear with me. Scroll back real quick. Time out. Thing's freaking out. Yokin comes in. Let's see. Learned so much. I heard that piston speed and engine cooling become issues when you stroke an engine. Is this true? Yeah, for a couple of reasons. One, piston speed obviously adds friction, which reduces the efficiency of piston. But secondly, piston speed basically, in effect, lowers your power band. Actually, from that point of view, it'd be this way, but it actually lowers your power band because you are reaching specific velocity thresholds at a lower RPM because piston speed is higher, or at least is the same speed as what it would have been with a shorter stroke at a higher RPM. So that's what makes strokers so great and what makes them so much fun, and really kind of gives you a more rich driving experience, is that you've got this fat torque curve all the time. You know, you tip into the throttle, camshaft for camshaft, intake for intake, you're always going to have more torque all the time until something in that inlet tract loses efficiency due to velocity. So whether your heads would start to lose efficiency or the intake manifold starts to lose efficiency, at that point, well, it will reach that point sooner, but up to that point, you'll always be making more power. And that's why strokers are so much fun. That's why I would never advise against it. It's just at what point, what's the purpose of it all the way around? Let's see. It's SRT craze saying buildable Hellcat or rebuilt Hellcat superchargers with a guarantee for 1,800. Damn, that ain't bad. I'll tell you what, I might be on board for that. If I were in the market for a supercharger and they've got an adapter plate for it and everything's going to bolt up the way it's supposed to, hell yeah, I'd jump on that. I'd jump on that way before Whipple. Shoot, I'd be on that like straight away. We already know what kind of power that that Hellcat supercharger is capable of, so for sure I would get that. See, Phoenix 98 saying Mopar's got the anti-venom. Mopar is the anti-venom. That's what's up. I like it. Symphonic says, so we all know Dodge is killing it in the marketing department with commercials and all while Ford wait on. And all, why does Ford and Chevy never advertise their Mustangs, Camaros, or Corvettes? Man, I tell you what, I don't know why they, well, let's look at it like this. Mopar does an incredibly good job of marketing their cars, and they're doing it kind of in Mopar fashion. I mean, Mopar back in the 60s and early 70s was the undisputed king of youth marketing. They had basically cornered the whole performance at a bargain price kind of mentality. They embraced drag racing like you would not. I'm sure why Ford and Chevrolet don't follow, or at least don't market their cars more to a youth market, or at least a youth-minded market, or to a more grassroots racing style market. It doesn't really make any sense. I mean, Mustang would actually be the best one to do it with if you think about it, based on price, performance, and the features that car has, like line lock, and the fact that it is so strong. So I would have to say that excuse me, sorry, my voice is starting to go a little bit here. I would have to say that why don't they? I don't know. Probably because they're a world market, and that advertising is geared specifically to the American market more than anything else. Let's see. Quick break. What's up, my brother? It says, sup, buddy? Said the Venom Kills Demons phrase was actually coined by a Ford executive. Can't recall his name, and he nearly got his ass fired over it. I like it. Likely because they were having nothing to kill with it, or kill it with. Hey, hang on just a second. Let me get some water. Time out. I've been yammering on straight for right at 3 hours. How old is that Ozarka? I'll tell you something. It's the thing that drives me nuts about that is, and you're right, they've got nothing to kill it with. And they've been promising something that has still been nothing now for so long with the GT500 that I think people are starting to forget that it actually was. That if you don't have something of substance to bring along with it, then it's a lie. There's a very thin line between a hype job and a lie. And at this point, people are starting to get so, I don't know, kind of over the idea of a GT500 even coming into existence. I mean, we're talking about the mid-engine Corvette now. You mean to tell me that Ford would actually allow GM to get a leg up again on them? With that, there are more people talking about the mid-engine Corvette than the GT supercar. Think about that for a minute. I mean, there are more people excited, I should say, for every reason in the world that you could get excited about a car and not have the bougie ass mentality that Ford has with their GT supercar coming out at $500,000. Yeah, the mid-engine Corvette is going to be having that Ford GT squarely in its sights for Le Mans GT, what is it, GT2 or GT1, whatever class it runs in. Yeah, Ford, enjoy your time in the sun, because once Corvette gets that program sorted out, your days in that limelight are done. Just deal with that. Toby Ron, last question. If Ford could come out with a GT500 CR1, which one, who would win? We can't even speculate on what the GT500 is ever going to be. So the ZR1 for sure. But that goes back to the whole Mustang versus Vet thing from even back in the 60s. It didn't matter how bad the Mustang was, the Vet still had its number. It's just the way that the world works. Let's see. God Soldiers chiming in with a little bit of the good word for us. Thank you very much for that. Justin Baker says, "Yep, that's how it slipped on my drag slip." Yep, and some hit. Yeah, wait, and oh shit, hang on, time out. Yeah, he's talking about 45 being. This is Justin Baker saying 45 was really unhappy. Probably flashed it on the 4-5. Said it spooked him pretty good. The moment he pulled over. Yeah, no, listen, man. I tell you something. That's a sick feeling, man. I've definitely been there. Let's see. You keen? Okay, I'm going to get it right eventually. Last question, Mopar Messiah. Thank you very much. I'm definitely not the linguist, Messiah. 426 Ford Stroker build with all the upgrades and supporting mods and 100 shot of dope. Is this doable or is it going to blow up? No, that's absolutely doable. That's doable and then some. With the right internals, that block will handle a boatload of power. So don't worry about the actual power number. Just make sure you're getting the proper components and that it's properly assembled. If that's the case, nice and balanced, you will have nothing but fun with that setup. The setup I was thinking about for my 392 at one point. Posner2 asked, if I upgraded my Hellcat pulley, would I pin the crank? Depends on the pulley. If I got the clutch pulley, probably not. If I didn't, then yeah, consider it mandatory. There's a lot of load being transferred back through that crank, and you will spin a balancer. It depends on what pulley you get, but yeah, you can definitely hurt yourself with that without pinning the crank. Let's see. Jay Poma says, I'm pretty sure I watched that Ford executive was saying that in a staying mode video. Yeah, he probably was saying something like that, but yeah, it's just one of those things where, you just kind of look at it and shake your head. Like, are we even talking about the same thing at that point? I don't know. Jay Palm again says, Ford and Chevy never stopped making the Mustang Camaro, plus they still sell, so it's almost like there's no need to advertise. Well, that's the thing. Chevy got out of the Camaro game from 2002 to 2010. Ford never quit making the Mustang, although you can kind of make the argument that, those weren't the best years in the world for Mustang. But you know what? They didn't have any competition. And, oh, yeah, by the way, Mopar didn't have shit to talk about except for the Viper. And even that thing went through a couple of on-again, off-again type deals. So, I don't know. It's just kind of one of those things where you look at it and you go, you know what, man? With all the respect in the world that I have for Ford with the Mustang, I really would like to see something cool come out of that stable soon. Let's see. Justin Becker says, I think I can get this thing to spool on the launch. They don't make a two-step for it. And I was thinking, with my cam and 3,200 RPM converter, what are your thoughts? Actually, you could spool it up with that 3,200 RPM converter. You just got to remember that you may start pushing it a little bit you'll be foot braking it. So yeah, you will push it a little bit, but you could stall it up pretty good on a 3,200 RPM converter. at that point, it's just once it hooks, what's it going to act like to that transmission? Let's see. Toby Ram is saying Venom kills Demon. Carroll Shelby rolls in his grave every time this phrase is uttered. Well, he has done work for both Ford and Dodge, so I'm sure he's rolling over twice. Let's see. Danny, is it Curlay or Curlet? I think it's Curlay. Cool looking name there. Says I'm going Dodge next go around. Yeah, always go Dodge every go around. Justin Baker saying his builder told me to break it first so he can see the weak points. Oh man, that is a fantastic marketing strategy. I like it. Well, hey guys, my voice is about cashed out. I've got 3 hours in on this. I want to thank everybody for chiming in. Thank you guys for those of you guys that donated to the cause, so to speak. Jay, thank y'all so very much. Definitely appreciate that. You scroll back through here real quick. Man, we answered a bunch of questions tonight. That was a lot of fun. Symphonics, thank you very much as well. I do appreciate that. I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. But looking forward to doing this one again next week. Oh, hang on, I'm having a problem here. Looking forward to doing this again next week. You guys have a great one, and that will be a wrap on this one. Hassan, thank you very much. Jay, thank you very much. Right back at you. Y'all have a great one. Adios.